value, whether it's healthcare or consumer. I mean, God forbid they think about energy, but I mean.
So the two questions we always ask investors, the first one is, what is your timeline? Do you need this next week, or are you retiring in 25 years? And then the second is, where are the holes in your portfolio? What don't you have? I heard you discussing earlier with Mike Holland about how if everything's working in your portfolio, you're doing something wrong. Some things should always be out of favor. That means you're diversified. So if you don't have emerging markets or global non-U.S. stocks, that's a hole you fill. The first thing you start to do is look at what don't you have, so you become broadly diversified. One day this bull market will end. One day this economic expansion will end. Nobody knows when it'll happen, and the odds of you getting out in time and then getting back in are so low that you want a broadly diversified portfolio that could withstand the future 20, 25, 30% bear market. And I don't know if we're going to be so lucky as to have it last just a quarter, like the Q4 2018 bear market lasted 3 months. We don't normally have that.
I want to segue here, and we can do that with Barry Ritholtz. See him in Bloomberg Opinion, folks, and his wonderful podcast, longer conversations with people in economics and particularly finance and investment, as well, master of business. And it's hugely successful, I should point out, over at Spotify and Apple Music as well, Apple Podcasts. Barry, I look at the banks and I look at HSBC, and everybody in the room's got enough gray hair to know this is, I'm going to say charitably, the third go around for HSBC. Do you see any room in the modern age anymore for a number 4 competitor or a number 5? I mean, Michael Mabutian was brilliant on this 20 years ago. I still have his original Credit Suisse papers. You know, with technology, with digital, with Ethernet network structures and mathematics, there's only room for 1 or 2, right?
In banking, it's a little different. When we look at JP Morgan as the best run bank in that space for the giant banks, and then you look at the other end, the one that just can't seem to get out of its own way, Wells Fargo, you can own both of those with the understanding that you're chasing something that's worked out well and you're buying something that has done the exact opposite. If you want to own a stock in the middle, and I don't really track HSBC closely, you have to have a compelling rationale for buying what is not either the cheapest stock in the sector or the best performing stock in the sector.
I don't know what happens, Tom. This brings up the great question. Like, you think about, is there room in the global banking world for outside of the big 4 or 5, and I'm thinking Bank of America, Citi, those kinds. You think about Deutsche Bank. Where does Deutsche Bank fit? Where does HSBC, who has a natural home in Asia, the fastest growing market in the world?
I go to Desai at the London School of Economics, Lord Desai. Barry, you don't compete away revenues. Everybody's struggling to get the marginal revenue. You compete away profits. And my reading of Jonathan Tice's brilliant work on HSBC this morning is basically to participate. They've competed away their profits everywhere but Hong Kong. That's all there is to it.
That's how capitalism works. You end up having a really successful fat margin business. That success attracts more competitors. Remember, a lot of these banks used to all have a different expertise.
Exactly.
And they were kind of in the same broad sector, but narrowly, they had their own little high-profit niche.
Right.
And now they've all become giant conglomerates, and they're all competing with each other in the exact same spaces.
You know, I'm fascinated by this and how you compete away. They compete away profits. What's amazing are Ritholtz has such sway. Yeah, he's coming back.
He's coming back.
It's a good thing. Barry Ritholtz with his author of Bailout Nation, and we'll continue with it. We got a whole bunch of themes to talk about with the news. In New York City, here's Michael Barnes.
Tom, Paul, thank you very much. The death toll from the coronavirus has reached 1,873, as almost half of China's 1.3 billion population remains subject to varying forms of travel restrictions and other quarantine measures. Dr. Anthony Fauci, director of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, explains the risk of catching the virus in the U.S.
In the United States right now, the risk is minimal. This day, it's minimal. But if it turns into a global pandemic, we could have a significant problem. And that's the reason why we're taking it very seriously.
The Boy Scouts of America announced today it has filed for bankruptcy protection. The filing comes as the organization faces lawsuits claiming it failed to remove known sexual predators from the organization. More than 2,000 former Justice Department officials are calling on Attorney General William Barr to resign. The rare statement from the officials came in the wake after 4 career prosecutors withdrew from the case after Barr overruled their sentencing recommendation for Roger Stone. Democratic presidential candidates are campaigning ahead of Nevada's caucuses on Saturday, and the state's Democratic Party says more than 26,000 people participated in the first 2 days of early voting. Democratic National Committee Chair Tom Perez.
The first day and the last day tend to be the most attended days of early vote in other contexts. And we're going to make sure our goal is to get this right.
Former National Security Advisor John Bolton warns the Trump administration could block his memoir that describes his interaction with the president over Ukraine. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg. Paul, Tom?
Michael Barr, thank you so much. We got the markets open for you 13 minutes into the morning trading session. We have some red on the screen. S&P, they're about 6.8 points. That's just 0.2% off of the lows we saw earlier this morning. The Dow off about 91 points. That's 29,303 on the Dow Jones Industrial. NASDAQ down 22 points, again about 0.2%. Treasuries, not much movement there. The 10-year up about 4.30, pushing that 10-year yield down to 1.57%. We got weakness again in crude oil globally. This is Bloomberg Surveillance.
This is a Bloomberg Pursuits look at luxury. Prague says too many people spending nights in the city are not spending enough of them. It's expanding its campaign to put the brakes on Airbnb and other holiday rental websites, which the city says are locking locals out of the housing market and changing the face of historic neighborhoods. The Czech capital has approved a plan that calls for legislative changes allowing local authorities to restrict short leases and force the platforms to share more details about its users, including the number of guests during a stay. In London, bankers and fund managers are buying top-end luxury homes at a rate unseen since 2013. Financiers accounted for 34.6% of the homes bought for more than £2 million in the UK capital's toniest neighborhoods last year, as concerns about the city's post-Brexit future recede. What's this? Germany is considering slapping speed limits on its autobahns. Parliament is weighing the move to curb emissions and reduce road deaths. Visit BloombergPursuits.com for more. I'm Andrew O'Day, Bloomberg Radio.
Why do hedge funds and other alternative managers rely on Pershing for a highly personalized experience? Mark Alderati, a managing director at BNY Mellon's Pershing and head of Prime Services, explains.
In today's fast-paced environment, where the only constants are change and volatility, you need a prime broker who's both steady and agile, focused on supporting your needs so that you can focus on growing your business and producing results. Exceptional client service and advocating for our clients is at what we do. Our award-winning high-touch team is just one of the benefits of working with BNY Mellon. We help alternative investment managers create great experiences for their clients. Whether it's customized financing, securities lending solutions, platform access, or outsourced trading, BNY Mellon's Pershing is a prime broker who's committed to this business and dedicated to meeting your evolving demands.
To learn more about the unique and industry-leading solutions for hedge funds and other alternative managers, visit Pershing.com. Pershing, LLC. Member FINRA, NYSE.
The Dacia Duster has won what car? Best family SUV less than £20,000 for the second year running. Time to roll out the fanfare. Starting from only $10,995, our prices are pretty modest, just like our celebrations. Visit dacia.co.uk to find out more about our range of award-winning cars. Dacia, you do the maths.
When you're not listening to your team, take it to the end zone, the rim, or the net. Keep up with the biggest moments in sports by following TuneIn on social media.
Block, Cook into the end zone for the touchdown.
From reminders of the live top games to tips of the best sports stations and podcasts.
Welcome to Undisputed. We are live from Los Angeles. I'm Jenny Taft here with Skip Bayless.
Follow at TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn. The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
This is not a commercial. This is a reminder. With TuneIn Premium, you could be listening to more music commercial-free. Get over 45 commercial-free music stations. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow. U.S. equities are slumping with tech shares leading declines after Apple said sales would miss forecasts, spooking investors who would hope for a limited economic impact from the deadly coronavirus. Treasuries are rising, the dollar strengthening. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. The S&P 500 down 0.2%, almost 7 points to 3373. Dow Jones Industrial Average down 0.3%, or 91 points at 29,307. And the Nasdaq's down 0.2%, or 22 points at 9709. 10-year Treasury up 430 seconds, yield 1.57%. The yield on the 2-year 1.41%. NYMEX crude oil is down 1.25%, or 64 cents at 51.41 a barrel. COMEX gold up 0.33%, or $5 to 15.91.40 an ounce. The euro 1.0794 against the dollar. The yen at 109.94. Manufacturing in New York State accelerated in February to the highest level since May as orders and shipments jumped. We are watching shares of Walmart. They're up 0.5% after it reported earnings this morning. And again, watching Apple shares, now down about 2.7%. And that's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Tom and Paul.
Karen, thanks so much. Paul Sweeney and Tom Keene thrilled you with us. With us, Barry Redholz. I say equities, bonds, currencies, commodities, and yet we really never talk about commodities. I mean, remember in the 70s, it was like this all the time?
Yep.
Barry Redholz with us. And Barry, you know this goes back to CTAs, and the hedge funds where they get on a trend-based idea. They get a coffee, they get a live cattle, whatever, and they get on a trend and they stay on a trend, and you can make some nice alpha there versus the volatility of all this other stuff. And this is almost away from oil. Why don't we do more of this now? Is it just the long-term disinflation of commodities?
Two reasons. First, over the long term, commodities don't add a whole lot of uncorrelated gains relative to stocks and bonds. So there is some academic debate about that. I'm in the camp that it's not necessarily helpful to a portfolio, but the bigger reason, especially talking to the trend followers and the futures traders, is that there are always so many cross currents going on in the global economy and all the factors that affect commodity price. It's rare that you have a lot of conviction, and I'll give you a quick example.
Please.
2002, and I very vividly remember having this conversation with clients and others, and people were shocked. You had ultra low rates, you had a weak dollar that was falling, and you had the starting point of robust inflation. All three of those factors add up together to make gold and oil and foodstuffs trend higher, and they did for 5, 6, 7 years. It's unusual that the picture is that clear, because let's look at what's going on with oil. It was almost $64 in the beginning of the year. The coronavirus made people nervous. Do we know how big this is going to be? Do we know the impact on global trade? How much of the global GDP is going to slow down? All that stuff is so ambiguous. It's very hard to make a long-term bet in commodities, because 6 months from now, it's probably a very different situation. I don't know if it's much better or much worse. I hope it's much better, but we really are operating blind, and that's why it's so challenging today.
So if you have a client, Barry, who has some opinion about commodities, maybe wants to be long pork bellies, how do you typically suggest they play the commodity? Is it an ETF thing? How do you?
So rather than buy the specific commodity, so that's you're using futures, you're using leverage, and you're very subject to the measuring stick, which is the dollar. If someone really has a firm conviction about a particular commodity, I'll tell you what's come up a bit in the past couple of years. Timber has come up frequently. Water as a commodity play has come up. We try and look for either an ETF or a stock that can address it. And there are a couple of interesting ETFs, either say clean water plays or green climate plays. But it's very hard to make a long-term bet that is not subject to what's happening in the macroeconomy, what's happening with the dollar, what's happening with interest rates, which is why commodities trading is such a challenge for the layperson.
All right, so it just, in your typical 60-40 portfolio, your typical investor the client that you're talking to, are you telling them to really focus on liquidity in the market, focus on the Fed, focus on the ECB? Is that it, or what do you suggest?
No, we don't even talk about that. The main thing we focus is discounted cash flow. What's going on in the future? Is the economy continuing to grow? Are these companies continuing to sell products? And are they so efficient and innovative that they're profitable? Note what took place with Apple. It's not that their profit margins are being attacked. It's that their supply chain and the overall economic activity in Asia is slowing down. And they have to say, hey, we have no clarity on revenue because they don't know when this is going to clear up. Maybe it's next week. Maybe it's next year. You don't know.
One of the joys of losing money, not that I have a working knowledge of losing money, is something called mining stocks. Mm-hmm. And they can be Broken Hill Properties of Australia or, whatever. But one of the things here, Barry, is they try to hedge their risk. And we all know in academics, they all go down in flames about once every 7 years. I mean, they're hedging out on these, industrial mining, Falcon Ridge from years ago or whatever. And then at some point they get it wrong. Boom.
So I'm fond of the Mark Twain quote, a mine is a hole in the ground with a liar standing next to it. But the thing that I really am intrigued at is if you look over the past decade or two at the miners, you will notice that the GLD ETF has made it unnecessary for portfolio managers who want gold exposure, who want that commodities inflation hedge. They used to buy a basket of miners or junior miners, since GLD has come out, they're orphan stocks.
GLD, the Spider Gold shares.
Yes.
Can we squeeze this in, maybe in the same regard? The way to learn to buy a diversified ETF in biotech is to be short something. Come in on Monday and it's 10 to 20.
Exactly.
Something like that.
Any of those speculative names, you either buy all of them or buy none of them.
Yeah,
it's so challenging picking the right one.
Barry, this has been wonderful. Barry Ritholtz with us, just smart. Look for him, Bloomberg Opinion, and also on his podcast.
I tried to stump him something, but I was going to bring up some, pork bellies or palladium or something.
Bring up the mix. That's the only thing.
Don't make me angry.
Barry Ritholtz, thank you so much. Paul, what do you see out there? You're going into another hour here, moving things forward here with an equity market. The tape looks a lot better than it looked 4 hours ago.
Yeah, the tape looks better. I mean, you look at Apple down 2.5%. Think about it. When a company like that calls out China, calls out that they don't have a good, clear view on the revenue picture, given the run-up that these stocks have had, you would think you'd get more of a pullback here. But this market, as Lisa likes to describe it, is resilient, and that's kind of what we see. And I think that's due to the markets and participants are saying we got a lot of cash in the marketplace.
Two ideas: gold up $6, $15.93 the ounce. That gets my attention. Brazilian real trying to find new weakness, and I'd also point the euro. Big news there: 107. Weaker euro right now, 108.03 on euro. I'll get it out. 3, 2, 1. We are produced by Richard Truman. Please stay with us. Lots more coming up as we go through the day. Good conversations on economics, finance, investment. This is
the island. We hope you've enjoyed flying Cathay Airways. Oh, and Cathay, congratulations on the Euro Millions win.
Tonight's Euro Millions jackpot is a massive £22 million. That's dream come true money. Euro Millions from the National Lottery. Your numbers make amazing happen. Estimated jackpot. Rules and procedures apply. Players must be 16 or over.
You're 169 in the queue.
I proposed on the 169. She got offered the next stop.
You're my 169th greatest lover.
The number 169 never screamed going places until now. Get the Toyota Aygo X-Play for only £169 deposit, then £169 a month with 0% APR representative. Just go. iGo.
0% APR representative on new sales of iGo X-Play over 48 months. £169 per month. Customer deposit of £169 when proposed and approved via Access Toyota by 31st of March 2020. £3,311.25p optional final payment. Subject to status to over 18s. Indemnities may be required. Conditions apply. Toyota Financial Services.
Major League Baseball is back. Are you ready to unlock the 2020 season with TuneIn Premium?
And this one is gone! It hits the foul pole!
Be there from day one with every single game of spring training, rivalry games, split squads, Cactus League, Grapefruit League. TuneIn Premium has it all. Then, when the pitch count starts for real, experience live and on-demand access to every game, everywhere you go, from opening day to the World Series. Don't miss out on the action. Search Premium to upgrade today.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
Did you know your favorite radio stations are in your pocket? Yes, the TuneIn app lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio anywhere you want. To see all the stations broadcasting in your area, find the local radio section on the home screen. Keep it local with TuneIn.
When you're not listening to your team, take it to the end zone, the rim, or the net. Keep up with the biggest moments in sports by following TuneIn on social media.
Block, Cook into the end zone for the touchdown.
From reminders of the live top games to tips of the best sports stations and podcasts.
Welcome to Undisputed. We are live from Los Angeles. I'm Jenny Taft here with Skip
Bayless. Follow and TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn.
Ah, finally another commercial, said no one ever. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade now and get over 45 commercial-free music stations.
The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
Target and Five Below, who were hurt by a shorter selling season, warmer weather in some areas, and a lack of must-have items in key categories such as toys and electronics. Two big money managers are joining forces. Franklin Resources is buying Legg Mason in a $4.5 billion deal. The tie-up creates a firm with $1.5 trillion in assets. And big job cuts are coming to HSBC. The bank says it will do away with as many as 35,000 jobs over 3 years as part of a cost-cutting move aimed at slashing $4.5 billion in spending. Here in the U.S., HSBC also plans to cut its retail presence by 30%. Gina Cervetti, Bloomberg Radio.
When you put together the puzzle that's today's business and political environment,
Can you make a call given this swirl of data?
Is that already being reflected in the way that they're priced?
make sure you have all the pieces.
Which segments of Alphabet's business are most likely to come under scrutiny?
They're getting mixed signals from governments.
He's failed to gain traction. Will he have to abide by a subpoena?
Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business, Radio.com, and iHeartRadio apps, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening. From the financial capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio. This is Bloomberg Markets with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney.
Is there any bank right now in the U.S. that you think is a buy?
Do you think Chairman Powell has lost the market?
Jeff Bezos is no dope. What's the big ka-ching?
The big question, I think, for investors is free cash flow.
Breaking market news and insight from Bloomberg experts.
The U.S. tariffs actually hurt both China and the U.S.
Large strategics are looking to either buy or invest in innovation.
Soybeans and corn have been basically at or below the cost of production for about 4 or 5 years.
What we see more bonds, more yield.
This is Bloomberg Markets with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
Good Tuesday morning from New York City to our worldwide audience. Coming up, we're going to get the latest on the outlook for the U.S. Federal Reserve and interest rates with our good friend Ira Jersey from Bloomberg Intelligence. Plus, we're going to get the latest on the health of the U.S. manufacturing. Are there signs of life in industrial America? But first, let's go to Greg Jarrett of Bloomberg News for a Bloomberg Business Flash. Greg.
Hello, Paul. We're sponsored by New Jersey Institute of Technology, a top 100 national university in the latest U.S. News and World Report college rankings. Learn more at news.njit.edu. Stocks continue to slump after Apple indicated sales would miss forecasts, spooking investors who had hoped for a limited economic impact from the deadly coronavirus. Treasury's up, the dollar stronger. Christina Hooper, chief global market strategist at Invesco, tells Bloomberg market reaction to the coronavirus news could pose a buying opportunity.
Now, of course, investors need to be cautious right now, but there could very well be opportunities. I've talked about opportunities in Chinese stocks. We did see a strong rebound already there. So I think this is time for a wait and see. When there's a significant enough sell-off, it does make sense to find areas to add to.
We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg Radio. S&P 500 is down 0.2%, down 6. The Dow's down 0.3%, down 90. And the NASDAQ is down about 0.1%, down 8. The 10-year is up 6.30. The yield is 1.56%. West Texas Intermediate crude's down 1% at 51.53 a barrel, while COMEX gold's up 0.4% at 15.93 an ounce. The dollar yen 109.92. The euro $1.80.11. The British pound $1.30.28. Tesla shares have resumed their steep ascent after two prominent Wall Street analysts raised their price targets on the electric vehicle maker. The company has potentially become a key battery supplier for electric vehicles, prompted Morgan Stanley to nearly double the bull case for the shares. Right now, Tesla is up 7.4% at $859.50 a share. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Bloomberg Markets is on with Lisa and Paul.
Thank you so much, Greg Jarrett. Market Drivers brought to you by Commonwealth Financial Network. For the sixth straight time, J.D. Power ranks Commonwealth #1 in independent advisor satisfaction among financial investment firms. Visit commonwealth.com to learn more. The word of the day, I would argue, is resilience, because yes, we are seeing a slight decline in U.S. equities, but this comes amid a whole host of earnings concerns as well as the outlook in the face of the coronavirus. Dave Wilson, Bloomberg Stocks editor, joining us here in the Interactive Broker Studios. But really, to me, I mean, even the idea that Walmart missed, which you know, a lot of people are striking off, saying that their numbers still came in pretty well. The fact that the shares are up, that they're just completely striking this off. The fact that Apple shares aren't down more. The fact that people are looking at the potential for a protracted coronavirus-induced slowdown as being improbable at this point in terms of affecting the U.S. economy is really noteworthy and the theme of the day, Dave.
It sure looks that way. I mean, it's a market that has kind of stabilized in the last few days. If you're looking at stocks and, you know, what we're seeing.
Stabilized after barely wobbling, but carry on.
Yeah, I mean, and of course the S&P 500 index setting record after record. That's part of the mix as well. Sure, it's a sign of strength at this point, you know, and we're pretty much out of fourth quarter earnings now. We still have the retailers to come. Walmart's sort of leading edge as far as that goes. We won't really see a whole lot more until next week in terms of S&P 500 retailers. But yeah, I mean, it's a market that's hanging in there. I mean, given the concern that's around, you see it show up in terms of not only Apple shares, but Apple's chip suppliers also lower in response to the cut to their revenue forecast. So, you know, the concern is there. It's not like it's really kind of dictating the market's direction so much at this point, though.
So, Dave, you mentioned we've kind of gone through the majority of earnings here, which weren't great, but they weren't expected to be great. As you think about this market, are you in the camp that says as long as the central banks are accommodative, then that's really all this market needs?
I don't know if it's all the market needs. Clearly, it's a help, though. I mean, you think about sort of the basic equation when it comes to stocks versus bonds, and you see the 10-year Treasury yield at this point at 1.56%. Then you turn to the S&P 500, look at the dividend yield on the index. It's 0.2 of a percentage point higher, which may not be great by historical standards. It's better, though, than, you know, what we're seeing in the bond market. So, you know, you still have some of the income-oriented investors with some interest in stocks. And by the way, utilities are among one of the few groups that are up today within the S&P 500, if you look at the 11 main ones anyhow.
Let's take a gut check of this earnings season. And I think that John Authers, senior Bloomberg markets correspondent for Bloomberg, really put this well. He cited Andrew Lapthorne of SocTrend saying if you exclude the big five, Microsoft, Apple, Alphabet, Amazon, and Google, U.S. earnings were down 7.5% in the fourth quarter. If you look at the gains that we've seen on equity markets, they have largely been dictated by the big tech giants, which are continuing. And in a Bank of America Merrill Lynch fund manager survey that came out overnight, really highlighting how these growth stocks are viewed as the biggest overweight, the biggest, overcrowded trade, and yet everyone expects them to continue to outperform. This is sort of the conundrum baked into the market right now, is that these are the stocks that are dictating the gains all around, both in earnings as well as in the stock price. How much longer can it continue, Dave?
Well, if I knew the answer to that, I'd be out there trading and not talking to you.
You would still be with us. Are you kidding? You'd be talking about your ties.
Yeah, well, in any case, I mean, that really is the issue. The concern is that the biggest companies, the FANG stocks, if you want to call them that, have kind of decoupled, you might say, from the rest of the market. And what you're saying about earnings certainly reflects that concern. It's just a matter at this point that, given that you've got a lot of investing driven by the indexes, and the bigger stocks do have, a disproportionate role within the indexes. At the very least, you have investors still able to count their gains. You have the S&P 500 setting records. So it really becomes a matter of what's going to change that equation in a meaningful way. And is coronavirus going to do that? I mean, it doesn't look like it so far.
Well, maybe it doesn't. Maybe it does, Paul. And I was struck by the announcement that Apple released, which is being completely shrugged off by markets today. The idea that they are citing weakness in both supply, with these factories not coming online as quickly as they expected, as well as demand, with Chinese consumers not able to buy. You put these two things together, that could potentially be problematic.
Yeah, absolutely. It's 20% of their revenue in China, roughly, plus the supply chain aspects. And we had this argument, just a quarter or two ago as it related to global trade and the concern about that. And again, the stock took a little pause, but then moved higher. And I think the expectation that I hear from a lot of companies is they're temporary, I guess, is the key word.
Yeah, and, how long does this play out, and do companies get back to what they were in relatively short order, whether you're talking about, sales to Chinese customers or whether you're talking about supplies from China. And yes, Apple definitely hit with that double whammy as far as that goes. And then you can't discount trade. It kind of pops up its head. You had a report out of Dow Jones that the U.S. is looking at the possibility of restricting sales of chip equipment to China. And so you see the companies that make those devices taking a hit. KLA notably down more than 4% at this point, one of the worst performers on the day. In the S&P 500, Lam Research not far behind, with a drop of 3.6%.
Dave Wilson, Bloomberg Stocks Editor, thank you so much, as always, for the rundown. Dave Wilson joining us here in our Interactive Broker Studios. A couple other points of note today. The euro now the weakest versus the dollar since April 2017. This comes in the back of a German investor confidence reading that absolutely plunged. It was one of the most pessimistic that it has been, falling below the most pessimistic of economists surveyed by Bloomberg, leading to a lot of questions. People were expecting a bit of a revival here in the main economy of the Eurozone. We are not seeing it. Yes, it's because of the coronavirus. Yes, reduced demand for cars, which is such a huge part of the economy, but it raises a question of the outlook there. And frankly, at what point this bleeds into the U.S.? Right now, people saying, doesn't look like it's going to very much. Right now, let's head down to 99.1 Studios in Washington, D.C. Nathan Hager with World and National Headlines. Nathan.
Lisa, President Trump is threatening to sue everybody related to former special counsel Robert Mueller's investigation as he continues to try to derail the sentencing of his longtime friend and former advisor, Roger Stone. President put that threat out on Twitter this morning. It was his latest social media comment since Attorney General William Barr went on ABC News last week to urge the president to stop tweeting about criminal cases before his department. Stone is due for sentencing Thursday on charges of lying to Congress, but he is pushing for a new trial. A new poll means there will be a new face at tomorrow night's Democratic presidential debate. Bloomberg's Amy Morris has more on Michael Bloomberg's stage debut.
Bloomberg can participate in tomorrow's debate in Nevada. The NPR PBS NewsHour Marist poll shows Bloomberg with 19% support, meeting the Democratic National Committee's threshold for qualification. This, as a Monmouth University poll shows Bernie Sanders and Bloomberg with 22% support each, and Joe Biden with 18%, a virtual three-way tie in Virginia. And we should mention Michael Bloomberg is the founder and majority owner of Bloomberg LP, the parent company of Bloomberg Radio. In Washington, I'm Amy Morris, Bloomberg Radio.
China's Hubei province says it'll start tracking fever and cough medicine purchases to try to find unidentified coronavirus patients. That's as the death toll reaches close to 1,900 and the number of confirmed infections is past 73,000. Dr. Anthony Fauci is with the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases.
With the travel restrictions that we've imposed and which the Chinese themselves have imposed, and the identification, isolation, and contact tracing, we're doing pretty well.
Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. This is Bloomberg.
Two people who are as fascinated by the markets as you are.
What's your sense of the competitive landscape in the cloud business?
Lisa Abramowitz.
People were talking about potential regulatory pressure.
And Paul Sweeney.
Are you seeing flows into ESG ETFs?
Bloomberg Markets.
What's your main conversation today with some of these corporate executives?
Weekday mornings at 10 Eastern.
They're spending a lot of money there.
On Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
Tom has been a teacher for over 40 years. One day, I think one of the students had asked the question and he didn't remember the answer. And I also noticed that he was letting his class out earlier than they were supposed to let out. I was really starting to worry.
Levi and I talked about how it would change our lives, but he was there beside me.
When something feels different, it could be Alzheimer's. Now is the time to talk. Visit alz.org/ourstories to learn more. A message from the Alzheimer's Association and the Ad Council.
In-depth analysis, concise reporting, need-to-know global business news. Around the world and across the markets, Bloomberg connects the dots for decision makers. Stay on top of today's headlines. Follow big breakthroughs in tech. Understand the latest political issues. See how the world's wealthiest are spending their money. Track what's happening in the markets, and much more. Subscribe today to Bloomberg, the global standard for business reporting. Get it all at Bloomberg.com/subscriptions.
Okay, kids, Dad's gonna teach you how to dance. First, spread your feet apart. Then, pump your knee, nod your head, shake your hips, and bite your lip ever so slightly. Now, with one hand in the air, point at people with the other hand. I call that the rock star.
Dance like a dad. It's a great way to make a moment with your kids.
Now, make a face like it just smells something bad.
Visit fatherhood.gov. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
The rules say you can't have a big 4x4 SUV that combines power with fuel efficiency. But the new Vauxhall Grandland X Hybrid 4 breaks all the rules. The smart petrol-electric hybrid engine combines 300 horsepower with up to 204 mpg. That's right, 204. Search Grandland X Hybrid and test drive now at your local Vauxhall retailer. Vauxhall. New rules Britannia. Official WLTP Grandland X Hybrid 4 test figures. For comparison purposes only, obtained using combined battery power and fuel. Real-world figures may vary.
Good morning, this is your Southern service to London Victoria. Join in our onboard quiz. Here's our next clue. What sea sounds like a handheld party food but keeps you dry and protected from the rain? Not canapes, canopies.
At Southern Railway, we're investing over £7 million into making improvements for you, like canopies, cycle parking, and new platform lighting across more of our stations. Find out more and book your tickets at southernrailway.com. Southern Railway, we're with you.
This is not a commercial. This is a reminder. With TuneIn Premium, you could be listening to more music commercial-free. Get over 45 commercial-free music stations. Visit tunein.com/premium to upgrade.
A lot of people aren't aware that TuneIn lets you listen to the same terrestrial stations that you pick up on your FM AM dial, except you can hear them from anywhere. To see all the stations broadcasting in your area, find the local radio section on the home screen. Keep it local with TuneIn.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
When you're not listening to your team, take it to the end zone, the rim, or the net. Keep up with the biggest moments in sports by following TuneIn on social media.
Block, Cook into the end zone for the touchdown.
From reminders of the live top games to tips of the best sports stations and podcasts.
Welcome to Undisputed. We are live from Los Angeles. I'm Jenny Taft here with Skip Bayless.
Follow and tune in on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn.
Major League Baseball is back. Are you ready to unlock the 2020 season with TuneIn Premium?
And this one is gone! It hits the foul pole!
Be there from day one with every single game of spring training, rivalry games, split squads, Cactus League, Grapefruit League. TuneIn Premium has it all. Then, when the pitch count starts for real, experience live and on-demand access to every game, everywhere you go, from opening day to the World Series. Don't miss out on the action. Search Premium to upgrade today.
The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
And breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Stocks are down. The coronavirus effect is again being blamed. Tech shares are leading declines on the S&P after the iPhone maker Apple warned of production and demand disruptions due to the epidemic. Apple suppliers, including Dialog Semiconductor and AMS AG, contributed to the slide in European stocks. We look at the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg Radio. S&P 500 is down 0.25%, down 8. The Dow's down 0.4%, down 117, and the Nasdaq's down 0.1%, down 7. The 10 years up 8.30 seconds. The yield is 1.55%. West Texas Intermediate crude is down just about 1% at 51.56 a barrel, while COMEX gold's up 0.6% at 15.95.40 an ounce. The dollar yen 109.89, the euro $1.812, and the British pound $1.30.28. HSBC Holdings is set to slash about 35,000 staff from its workforce and is taking a $7.3 billion of charges in its most dramatic overhaul under Chairman Mark Tucker. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. I'm Greg Jarrett.
This is Bloomberg Markets with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
The everything rally has raised a conundrum, Paul, and I think today is a really good day to think about it as the pressure is still up. Resilience is really the story of today, even though we are seeing a bit of red in U.S. equities. That is, does 60-40 construction work? Do bonds act as an offset for stocks, or are we seeing everything melt up only to lead everything to melt down in tandem? Ira Jersey joining us now, Chief U.S. Interest Rate Strategist of Bloomberg Intelligence, joining us from Princeton, New Jersey. Ira, given the fact that we've continued to see yields come in on 10-year, 2-year, 30-year treasuries, people saying that it's not telling a conflicted story with respect to the equity rally that we have seen, a bit of a pause, albeit today. Do you think that we're setting up for everything rally to flip on its head and become the everything sell-off?
I think not. And the primary reason is that I think if there was a very major risk-off event, that treasuries at the very minimum would probably do very little. So you wind up with fixed income markets more broadly, but treasuries in particular, remaining as that ballast to equities as it's always been. I think one of the reasons why perhaps equities and risk assets keep going up is in part because people think that the Fed's going to come to the rescue, lower interest rates, and that's of course kept bond yields somewhat lower than they might be in other environments. Where, but nonetheless, when you look at some of the data just from the last year, and even when you go back to 2018 and look at year over year in 2018, a balanced portfolio tends to have the best Sharpe ratio, and so basically the return versus the amount of volatility you take is still the best in that kind of 60-40 mix.
What's the lower bound then for the 10-year Treasury in terms of yield?
Oh, well, theoretically, I think we have to rewrite all of that just based on what's gone on in Europe. I think realistically, if we wind up in a downturn, what our model shows is you could wind up getting 10-year yields down to 0.7, 0.8% in an environment where the Fed cuts to zero and you have very low interest rates. So ironically, though, if you think about that world, the yield curve would actually be steeper because 2-year treasuries would probably go to 0 or 25 basis points. And if 10 years go to 75 or 80 basis points, you're talking about the yield curve actually steepening from 15 basis points today in 2s, 10s all the way up to 50 basis points, right? So that's an environment where I think you can wind up with the curve play being significantly different than what you've seen over the last couple of months, where basically when you have rallies like we do today, the curve flattens, and that's because people think that the Fed might do QE in the future if they have to lower interest rates a lot.
That's kind of where I wanted to go, Ira. The Federal Reserve's current balance sheet expansion has some folks in the marketplace saying this looks like a quantitative easing, maybe a QE light. How do you kind of view it?
Yeah, so I dub it as QE light. I've called it that for quite a while, and I think one of the reasons it is because it only fits one of the two criteria for quantitative easing. So quantitative easing, in my view, includes the expansion of the balance sheet and therefore bank reserves, so kind of greasing the wheels, that's putting grease on. But on the other side, it also, quantitative easing is also a reduction of market risk. So you take out a lot of fixed income market risk and basically force investors to take on more risky assets like corporate bonds or mortgages or even high yield debt. And this version of T-bill buying that the Fed's doing doesn't fit that second criteria, but it only fits the first. So basically it only fits half of what QE is. Now, is it helpful in some ways? Yeah, for sure. And I think that it's being misinterpreted a little bit for what it is. But at the same time, it's not that huge risk takeout that all three periods and even Operation Twist represented back in the teens.
Why does this matter? I mean, I'm not asking with tongue in cheek, but I mean, not just, I'm wondering, this sort of arcane debate about whether it's QE or not QE. Why do we care?
Well, I think for two reasons. I think one is the interpretation of it. If it is quantitative easing, then some people think that means that it's good for risk assets, that you're basically not only greasing the wheels but also basically putting a bigger engine in the car to make it go faster. And but the thing is, yes, it's greasing the wheels, but it's not necessarily going to make the economy go faster because you're not forcing additional risk taking. So I think it affects things on a valuation perspective. And if the people who think that it's QE are wrong, then they could potentially be in for a rude awakening, especially given that the Fed is not going to continue this forever. They're going to go back to their traditional kind of balance sheet expansion that they've done forever in their history from 1913 to basically to 2009 when they started QE. They're going to grow their balance sheet at a couple of percent a year, not at 30 or 40% a year like they are now.
So just real quickly, Ira, where are we on the short-term repo market? It's got a weekly update there.
Oh, it's boring. I mean, that's the only way to talk about it. When you look at, repo recently has the ranges have been very small. The market's been very efficient, and there's no chinks in the armor. And a part of that is certainly the Federal Reserve continuing its repo operations, but it's also been the QE light operations. The fact that they've added several $100 billion of reserves over the past couple of months.
When Ira says it's boring, you can pretty much bet that he's not wrong.
Right, exactly. Ira Jersey, thanks so much for joining us. Ira's the Chief U.S. Interest Rate Strategist for Bloomberg Intelligence. Joining us on the phone from the Bloomberg Intelligence HQ in Princeton, New Jersey. So it's interesting, I think Ira's term for QE light, I think that's clearly how the market's kind of interpreting kind of what we're seeing from the Federal Reserve. An accommodative stance, liquidity in the marketplace. It seems to be, we're seeing that also out of Europe with the European Central Bank as well. And that seems to be providing the primary support and move up for these markets that have been setting, almost daily highs in the equity markets right here. Right now, S&P down 9 points, Dow down 125, the NASDAQ down 11 points. This is Bloomberg.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. For the second time in as many years, Apple has had to temper its sales outlook because of unexpected shifts in China, the country that served as the engine of its growth and success. Apple has cut its earnings guidance for the quarter ending March 31st because of the coronavirus, with tech shares leading declines in the S&P 500. Tesla shares resuming their steep rise after two prominent Wall Street analysts raised their price targets in the electric vehicle maker. The company's potential to become a key battery supplier for electric vehicles has prompted one of those analysts to nearly double his bull case for the shares. And after Pier 1 filed for bankruptcy to buy time as it pursues a sale, the company is now in talks with multiple potential buyers. It's also reiterated a plan to shut about 450 stores. And Paramount's Sonic the Hedgehog raced to the top of the North American box office over the President's Day weekend. The video game adaptation pulled in a solid $70 million through Monday. I'm John Tucker, Bloomberg Radio.
Imagine being fired because of who you love. Imagine being denied medical treatment because of who you marry. Imagine being evicted because of who you are. Millions of Americans don't have to imagine this. They have to live it. Because in 31 states, it's legal to discriminate against LGBT people. Get the facts at beyondido.org. Brought to you by the Gill Foundation and the Ad Council.
In-depth analysis, concise reporting, need-to-know global business news. Around the world and across the markets, Bloomberg connects the dots for decision makers. Stay on top of today's headlines. Follow big breakthroughs in tech. Understand the latest political issues. See how the world's wealthiest are spending their money. Track what's happening in the markets, and much more. Subscribe today to Bloomberg, the global standard for business reporting. Get it all at Bloomberg.com/subscription.
At Ring, we've reinvented the doorbell. So no matter where you are or what time of day, you can watch over your home and the things you care about. Ring Video Doorbell streams HD video and two-way talk straight to your phone, so you can speak to whoever's at your door from anywhere.
Delivery.
Oh, great. Could you leave it with my neighbour, please?
Sure, no problem.
And it's so simple, you can install it yourself in minutes. See, hear and speak to whoever's at your door from wherever you are with Ring Video Doorbell. Available at ring.com and selected retailers.
When you're not listening to your team, take it to the end zone, the rim, or the net. Keep up with the biggest moments in sports by following TuneIn on social media.
Block, Cook into the end zone for the touchdown.
From reminders of the live top games to tips of the best sports stations and podcasts.
Welcome to Undisputed. We are live from Los Angeles. I'm Jenny Taft here with Skip
Follow
Bayless.
at TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
A lot of people aren't aware that TuneIn lets you listen to the same terrestrial stations that you pick up on your FM AM dial, except you can hear them from anywhere. To see all the stations broadcasting in your area, find the local radio section on the home screen. Keep it local with TuneIn.
Major League Baseball is back. Are you ready to unlock the 2020 season with TuneIn Premium?
And this one is gone! It hits the foul pole!
Be there from day one with every single game of spring training, rivalry games, split squads, Cactus League, Grapefruit League. TuneIn Premium has it all. Then, when the pitch count starts for experience live and on-demand access to every game, everywhere you go, from opening day to the World Series. Don't miss out on the action. Search Premium to upgrade today.
Upgrade to TuneIn Premium and get over 45 commercial-free music stations. You'll also get live commercial-free news, plus live play-by-play games from NFL, MLB, NBA, and NHL. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
Around the world. If you see potential in change, our industry specialists will maximize SEI's integrated platform of data and risk management, global investment operations, compliance support, and investor services to position your asset management business for success. Come grow with us.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at SEIC.com/seize change.
Business is constantly evolving. Is your financial printer evolving to keep ahead of the curve? At Command Financial, we are redefining financial printing by providing industry-leading expertise, leveraging technology, and honing processes and best practices. Every day, Command helps SEC registrants, as well as members of their working groups, including securities attorneys and investment bankers, prepare, file, and disseminate regulatory and disclosure documents, such as registration statements, M&A documents, and mutual fund prospectuses and reports. Command provides a full range of services to help you effectively complete your deal, meet your disclosure requirements, and achieve your shareholder communications objectives. Visit our website at commandfinancial.com and learn how we're evolving, not only with the times, but also with your business requirements. Command Financial, redefining financial printing.
Adopt US Kids presents What to Expect When You're Expecting a Teenager. Learning the lingo.
GOAT, G-O-A-T, acronym, stands for Greatest of All Time, as in
Spaghetti sandwiches for dinner? They're my fave. Dad, you're the GOAT.
You don't have to speak teen to be a perfect parent. Thousands of teens in foster care will love you just the same. Visit adoptuskids.org. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt U.S. Kids, and the Ad Council.
News without analysis is like half a bridge.
Why is the debt to GDP ratio still so important?
Those things, once they're set in place, stay around for years.
Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business, Radio.com, and iHeartRadio apps, and BloombergRadio.com. Broadcasting live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119. And around the globe, the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Markets.
Coming up, we're going to dig into U.S. manufacturing. Have we seen the worst? Is there going to be a tepid resurgence? We speak with Justin Fox of Bloomberg Opinion. Plus, we'll take a look at the bull market. How much more does it have to go, especially given the coronavirus with Phil Orlando Federated? Right now, though, let's head over to Greg Jarrett for a Bloomberg Business Flash. Greg.
Stocks are down, Lisa. Tech stocks are dragging down the markets after a surprise sales warning from Apple. Fan concerns about the impact of the coronavirus outbreak on global supply chains. Francisco Geronimo, IDC UK analyst, tells Bloomberg the problem for companies like Apple is no one else in the world can make as much of the components as the ones shut down in China.
There are not many suppliers and many factories out there that can have a capacity, like Apple, for instance, with working with Foxconn. They employ 1.3 million people, and there are no other factory in the world with so many employees to be able to manufacture those kind of volumes.
Apple is down 2.4%. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg Radio. The S&P is down 0.4%, down 14. Dow's down 0.6%, down 178, and the Nasdaq's down 0.3%, down 28. The 10-year is up 11/30 seconds. The yield is 1.54%. West Texas Intermediate's now down 1.4% at 51.33 a barrel, with COMEX gold up 0.8% at 15.9940 an ounce. The dollar yen 109.83, the euro $1.0815, and the British pound $1.3019. The U.S. sanctioned a unit of Russia's largest oil producer, Rosneft, for maintaining ties with Venezuela's Nicolás Maduro and state-run oil company PDVSA, this according to U.S. government documents. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. I'm Greg Jarrett.
Bloomberg Opinion, informed perspectives, and expert data-driven commentary on breaking news.
It's 10:33 on Wall Street. Time to check in with Bloomberg Opinion. We're joined by opinion columnist Justin Fox. He covers all things on the industrial side for us. Looking at it, interesting, Justin, when we look at the U.S. economy, it's all about the consumer. The consumer's real strong. The industrial economy, not so much, although we did have some numbers out of New York today suggesting maybe some stabilization in some of that New York manufacturing data. But kind of how I want to approach the manufacturing side of the U.S. economy is from the regulatory side, the tariffs, if you will. When President Trump came in to office, he vowed to protect U.S. industrial might, the manufacturing, the midsection, tariffs on steel, tariffs on aluminum. How has that played out for those industries and just kind of the U.S. industrial picture in general?
I mean, the tariffs on steel and aluminum were supposed to help the steel and aluminum industries and maybe, as a side effect, hurt consumers of their products. And so I was kind of surprised when I looked at the jobs numbers a few days ago, and it's like employment's up in all of the major industries that use steel and aluminum, but it's down in primary metals production. It started falling about like 9 months ago. And so I think that's not because of the tariffs, but it sort of goes to show there are other forces out there beyond the tariffs that are probably bigger than the tariffs. And for manufacturing in the U.S. in general, the story for this during this whole expansion since 2010 has been that it's a lot better than it was in the first decade of this millennium, which was awful for U.S. manufacturing. It's been this sort of decade of fitful recovery.
Well, let's talk about that fitful recovery and the sort of trajectory of it, because there is a feeling, and Danielle DiMartino Booth in particular, coming out and saying she's expecting a real upswing in manufacturing in the United States, albeit tepid, albeit off of pretty low levels. But this comes as we don't see the same sort of exuberance at all. I mean, I don't want to call it exuberance, but the same sort of optimism over in Germany or other manufacturing centers? Why is it that we are seeing a sense of revival among certain sectors of the industrial?
Well, I mean, from Germany, first of all, is very dependent on exports for the manufacturing, and on China in particular for like machinery and other things. In the U.S., less so. Also, Germany had a great 2000s. We had an awful 2000s. I mean, some of it's just correcting that. And also, yeah, the U.S. has a big domestic market that can buy a lot of these things. And I think about 10 years ago was when people like this Hal Sirkin, then at Boston Consulting, said, hey, guys, U.S. manufacturing is actually competitive now. It's relatively cheap to make stuff here. And, yeah, that's not the only factor at work. And a lot of sort of manufacturing capabilities were hollowed out in the 2000s. But there's this room for growth. And if you look at the numbers over the course of the recovery, you know, it's sort of this steady, tepid, I guess would be the word for it, growth. And then there was this dip in 2015, 2016 for a variety of reasons: strong dollar, oil price collapse, bit of a global slowdown. And then things came roaring back in 2018. And the question then was, is that just a bounce back, or have we discovered this amazing new manufacturing force? And I think the answer now is, that was just a bounce back. But in general, the trend is upward.
The USMCA, the new NAFTA, if you will, is that expected to materially benefit U.S. manufacturing in general, do you think?
I just think it changes so little.
Right.
I mean, there are obviously specific things like a few dairy farms, and there's some labor provisions that might be significant, but it just doesn't change that much from NAFTA.
What has caused the U.S. to be competitive?
I mean, partly that manufacturing wages got hammered. I mean, the U.S. auto industry used to be great paying jobs, and basically new jobs in the U.S. auto industry are not great paying jobs. So that was part of it. Part of it was, you know, automation, figuring out ways to make things more efficiently. And I think part of it is just realizing that actually a lot of the savings that seem to be there in spreading your supply chain across the world, and especially into China, comes with risks, as we're seeing in spades right now.
Was the deglobalization wave that people talk about in force before the tariffs and before President Trump really made it a theme of his whole presidency?
Yeah, I think it was. I think that's been, you know, and again, there's a lot of deglobalization with the last recession, and then things bounced back, but it's still nothing. All the trends look very different than they did in the 2000s.
Justin Fox, thank you so much. This is really tremendous. Justin Fox is a Bloomberg opinion columnist joining us here in our Interactive Broker studios. You can read all of his columns, Bloomberg.com/opinion, OPIN, go on the Bloomberg. Really interesting to take a longer term view, especially in light of the fact that the wages have gotten hammered.
I learned something new there from Justin about the competitiveness of the U.S. As it relates to labor. And the auto industry is a great example. I didn't think of it that way. Those new contracts that we've been hearing about over the last 10 or 20 years, it's all about, okay, we'll protect the existing people, but the new people coming in are going to have to come in at a lower wage.
This is a really important conversation to be having in the election season, because this really is what has driven a lot of the populist anger, right? It has been this idea that the U.S. exported a lot of its dynamism overseas as it did have these supply chains, and now that tide has been reversing. It would be interesting to see how much momentum there is back to the resurgence in U.S. manufacturing. Right now, let's head down to our 99.1 studios in Washington, D.C. Nathan Hager with World and National Headlines. Nathan.
Lisa, President Trump is renewing his attacks on the Roger Stone case less than a week after Attorney General William Barr urged him to stop. In a series of tweets, the president said he'd be suing everybody involved in the Mueller investigation if he weren't president, but as he put it, maybe I will still. More than 2,000 former Justice Department officials have signed a statement calling on Barr to resign. Democratic Senator Ben Cardin.
That indicates their pride in the professionalism and independence of the Department of Justice as being a nonpartisan entity in which, under Attorney General Barr, is moved to be a partisan entity.
Stone's sentencing is set for Thursday. He is pushing for a new trial. Former New York City Mayor Michael Bloomberg will make his debut on the Democratic presidential debate stage tomorrow night in Nevada. A new NPR PBS NewsHour Marist poll gives him 19% support. It is his fourth poll in double digits, meeting the Democratic National Committee's new guidelines. Bloomberg's rise has made him more of a target from his Democratic opponents, including Bernie Sanders.
We say to Mr. Bloomberg, you are certainly not going to win when you have a record in New York City that included racist policies like stop and frisk.
Bloomberg has apologized for that policy. He says he was late in recognizing the harm it caused minority communities. Today, he rolled out a couple policy proposals, including an end to preferential admissions for children of college alumni, as well as tougher regulations on Wall Street. We should mention that Michael Bloomberg is the founder and majority owner of Bloomberg LP. That is the parent company of Bloomberg Radio. Global news, 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Nathan Hager. This is Bloomberg.
Why is delivering the best client experience a top priority at BNY Mellon's Pershing? Michelle Feinstein, Director of Client Engagement, explains.
Today's investors want a financial relationship that's on demand, customized, and leverages the latest digital technology. At BNY Mellon's Pershing, helping advisory firms and broker-dealers create great experiences for their clients is our priority. Through our integrated wealth experience, we give you a high-touch service, flexible technology choices, and expert insights, so you can deliver a highly personalized experience to your clients at every step, from onboarding to wealth planning, to performance analysis and more. And because we're part of BNY Mellon, you'll benefit from more than 230 years of strength and stability. At Pershing, we're personally invested in your success.
Visit Pershing.com to learn more about Pershing's integrated wealth experience. Pershing LLC and Pershing Advisor Solutions LLC are both members of FINRA and SIPC.
Message and data rates may apply. T&C and privacy terms can be found at babbel.com/terms. Please don't text and drive.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then try Babbel for free by texting EXPLORE to 64,000. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just text EXPLORE to 64,000 and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or text EXPLORE to 64,000 and try it for free. Text EXPLORE to 64,000.
Major League Baseball is back. Are you ready to unlock the 2020 season with TuneIn Premium?
And this one is gone! It hits the foul pole!
Be there from day one with every single game of spring training, rivalry games, split squads, Cactus League, Grapefruit League. TuneIn Premium has it all. Then, when the pitch count starts for real, experience live and on-demand access to every game, everywhere you go, from opening day to the World Series. Don't miss out on the action. Search Premium to upgrade today.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
A lot of people aren't aware that TuneIn lets you listen to the same terrestrial stations that you pick up on your FM AM dial, except you can hear them from anywhere. To see all the stations broadcasting in your area, find the local radio section on the home screen. Keep it local with TuneIn.
When you're not listening to your team, take it to the end zone, the rim, or the net. Keep up with the biggest moments in sports by following TuneIn on social media.
Block, Cook into the end zone for the touchdown.
From reminders of the live top games to tips of the best sports stations and podcasts.
Welcome to Undisputed. We are live from Los Angeles. I'm Jenny Taft here with Skip Bayless.
Follow and TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn.
Right now, instead of hearing this, you could be listening to the music that keeps you moving with TuneIn Premium. Find today's biggest songs and all of your favorites commercial-free. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
In independent advisor satisfaction among financial investment firms for the sixth straight time? We think it comes down to one thing: you. Because it's your input and feedback that keeps us focused on what's most important to you and your clients and continually pushes us to be the best we can be. Maybe that's why we receive top marks in every category of the J.D. Power 2019 Advisor Satisfaction Survey. They named us number 1 in client support, number 1 in firm leadership, number 1 in operational support, number 1 in compensation, number 1 in professional development support, and number 1 in technology support. Ready to partner with the best? Call Commonwealth at 866-462-3638 or visit commonwealth.com and feel the power. Member FINRA SIPC, a registered investment advisor. For 2019 J.D. Power Award information, visit jdpower.com/awards.
25 years ago, NJIT graduate Dick Sweeney co-founded Keurig Green Mountain, a company whose incredible innovations changed the way the world brews a cup of coffee. Today, he lectures widely on business leadership and is a strong advocate for NJIT's work to combine business education with the power of STEM.
NJIT is definitely fostering the innovative thinking for budding entrepreneurs simply because that's the world we live in. NJIT is producing students that have been trained, educated, and given the business acumen to be a contributor to a company. The distinct mission is to develop great STEM scholars. The attributes I've always looked for in team members are heart, smarts, guts, and luck. So we want people with passion, intelligence, courage, and never discount luck. The student coming out of NJIT has experienced all of that.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Stocks are down after tech giant Apple became the most well-known company to warn of a financial hit from the virus outbreak in China. Yes, tech stocks are leading the selling today. Apple itself is down 2.1%. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg Radio. S&P 500 is down 0.3%, down 11. The Dow's down 0.6%, down 166, and the Nasdaq's down 0.1%, down 12. The 10-year is up 11.30 seconds with a yield of 1.54%. West Texas Intermediate crude is down 0.4% at 51.85 a barrel, while COMEX gold's up 0.9% at $1,630 an ounce. The dollar yen is at 109.86. The euro $1.816, and the British pound $1.3023. Walmart posted lackluster holiday sales, but its outlook for the current year met expectations, displaying the resilience that's kept the retailer among the industry's top performers. Comparable store sales increased 1.9%. Right now, Walmart is up 1%. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. I'm Greg Jarrett.
This is Bloomberg Markets with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
We still don't have a sense of whether the coronavirus is contained or can be contained. There still are questions being raised about the numbers coming out of China. Apple is saying that they will not meet their revenue forecasts for the first quarter in light of some of the sales disruptions in China. And yet markets incredibly resilient in the United States. Joining us now to find out exactly how much longer markets can remain this resilient, Phil Orlando, Chief Equity Market Strategist and Head of Client Portfolio Management at Federated Hermes, joining us by phone. Phil, you've been a bull. You've gotten it right for a long time. You've been heavy into the big tech giants. I'm wondering, from your perspective, at what point do you throw in your cards and say, you know what, this is going to be a longer-term issue for the tech giants, what's going on in China?
So, thank you again for having me on. I'm not sure that we're going to throw the towel in. I will absolutely concede that the market, except for, a 3% correction over about 6 trading days at the end of January, has largely ignored the coronavirus. And in my humble opinion, I think this situation is going to be potentially bigger than people think. And we're just today getting the first snippets of economically related news, investment related news on coronavirus. Witness, Apple talking about having some supply issues, and Walmart talking about, having missed on Christmas, particularly January, maybe some of December. I'm not sure exactly where the details are, in part based upon coronavirus. And we also know that a couple of the other retailers, Kohl's and Target, have had disappointing numbers. So I think there's going to be more of this going forward. As we looked at the retail sales numbers that were related to the street for the Commerce Department on Friday, Christmas was pretty good. And as we define Christmas, because of the extraordinarily early Thanksgiving and the way the Black Friday weekend was sort of split up, half in November, half in December, companies were making a concerted effort to start to advertise and move Christmas product in the month of October. So our view is, okay, let's just define Christmas as October, November, December, and January, because you've got gift card redemptions. So as we looked at the data for those 4 months on a year-over-year basis, retail sales are up 4.1%. That was a pretty good Christmas. So I'm fine with Christmas having been good. Coronavirus really didn't start to become part of our nomenclature here in the States until about the third week in January, and has now really started to, catch some traction here. Looking at coronavirus versus SARS back in the 2002-2003 neighborhood, the total confirmed number of cases for SARS was 8,100. We're already north of 73,000 with the coronavirus, with no real end in sight here. And our best guess is that this is going to continue for at least another couple of months, and that's got to take into account retail sales numbers being sloppy in February. Maybe that spills into the Easter season, and I think we're going to get more guidance down from companies who are going to use coronavirus as a justification for why their numbers are coming in, softer than expected. And I'm not sure that any of that is yet in the market, with the market having done as well as it's been doing.
So, Phil, are you in the camp that I think is gaining some more members every day? And that camp is, if the coronavirus does have a meaningful economic impact on global economies, the central banks are there waiting to respond and lower rates and be, supportive?
We're absolutely there. But I don't think our Federal Reserve is going to cut interest rates, because I don't think the coronavirus situation is going to be, from a time standpoint, we think it's going to have a significant first quarter impact. And I think as we get into the second quarter, the middle of the year, I think we're going to have our hands around this. We are doing much better looking at coronavirus compared to SARS. One of the things we're focusing on is what's known as the mortality rate, the percentage of people who died from this. With SARS, that mortality rate was just under 10%. With the coronavirus, the mortality rate right now is running about 2.5%. The Chinese government, as much as we think they're being irresponsible here in terms of transparency and letting the world know what's going on, et cetera, when we look at COVID-19 versus SARS, they have been much more aggressive by, a period of about a month to 6 weeks in terms of letting the world know what's going on, giving us the sequencing. U.S. and global pharmaceutical and biotechnology companies are actively working on some compounds that might have some promise in terms of vaccines or, medicinal purposes or whatever. So I truly believe in my heart of hearts that as we get into the second quarter, working towards the middle of the year, we're going to have our hands around this, and we're going to see these numbers start to recede. So it's ugly right now. We're going to see a hit to GDP growth. We're going to see a hit to corporate earnings. But as we look at the balance of the year, I think we're looking at a snapback as we get into the middle of the year, and a strong second half of the year. And I think that's why we're seeing a limited market response now. I think investors to some degree are sharing that view and perhaps looking through the ugliness of what's going on right now.
Right. Well, that's exactly where I was going to go, which is you said that you don't think markets have been pricing in the real potential implications of the coronavirus. It sounds like they're not, because they're expecting a V-shaped recovery in the economy, and therefore there isn't going to be a longer lasting effect. Are you in that camp where you're not going to change any of your positioning in response to what we're seeing over in China, just with the expectation of this V-shaped recovery?
We have not made any changes in terms of positioning. We made some changes in positioning at the end of last calendar year in terms of taking domestic large cap growth from overweight back to neutral and upgrading domestic large cap value from neutral to overweight. We've got overweights in domestic small cap. And we also added an overweight to emerging markets, which in light of what we now know with coronavirus, maybe that was a little premature, but we're going to stick with it, again, because we think of the relatively short-lived nature of what we think we're dealing with right now.
Hey, Phil, thanks so much for joining us. We really appreciate your thoughts, as always. Phil Orlando, Chief Equity Market Strategist and Head of Client Portfolio Management at Federated Hermes, joining us on the phone. Phil has remained, as you noted, Lisa, consistently bullish. He's been consistently right. I think I appreciate his thoughts on the coronavirus, how, kind of putting a time frame on it, kind of bleeding into the second quarter, but then becoming less of an issue in the second half of the year. That's, I think, how they are discounting the coronavirus there at Federated. Right now, the markets, S&P down just 10, just kind of hanging down there. Been there most of the morning. Dow down 161. This is Bloomberg.
Teaching shapes lives. If you're thinking of becoming a teacher, our expert teaching advisors can give you the level of support you need to get one step closer to the classroom. Teaching. Every lesson shapes a life. Search Get Into Teaching. Advisor support subject to eligibility.
TSB's Fix and Flex loan offers one of the best rates you can get. 2.9% APR representative fixed for up to 5 years. On loans from £7,500 to £25,000. Subject to status, UK residents only over 21. Based on de facto data, January 2020.
Winter joggers of London, it's chilly. Your legs are caked in mud and your nose is running faster than you. Then, get that heating on. You deserve it. Thanks to Hive Active Heating, you can control your heating wherever you are with a tap of the app, which could save you up to £120 a year by never having to heat an empty home. Buy today and get a free Amazon Echo Dot. Search Hive Heating. Hive services require broadband and Wi-Fi. Terms apply.
Taking it for a spin has changed. Giving it a whirl has changed. With £500 towards a qualifying new Vauxhall with 4.9% APR representative when you take a test drive, the rules have changed. Book your test drive this weekend. Vauxhall. New rules Britannia. Allowance provided as deposit contribution on qualifying new Vauxhalls. Conditional sale and personal contract purchase only. Subject to status. T's and C's. 18 plus Vauxhall Finance. Registered by 2nd of April 2020. Search Try Your New Vauxhall.
In case you didn't know, TuneIn lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio, except you can hear them from anywhere. If you want to find a station from somewhere else in the world, navigate to the By Location section under Browse. Keep exploring with TuneIn.
Financial capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio. This is Bloomberg Markets with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney.
Are we on the brink of a more serious downturn?
I've always thought of the municipal bond market as a little bit of a safe haven.
Banks are going to have to start paying their depositors more.
Are we still in that mode where we're buying the dips?
Breaking market news and insight from Bloomberg experts.
Cash, if you're looking at treasury bills, provides a higher return than stocks and bonds here in the U.S.
If your consumer is a woman, you're more likely to be a growth company.
Longer-term interest rates can go down, even with short-term interest rates still going up a little bit.
This is Bloomberg Markets with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
Coming up, the great consolidation in asset management continues. The tie-up with Franklin Templeton and Legg Mason, the latest to cross the tape. Plus, we'll take a look at Walmart, disappointing with the results, yet remaining resilient in the trading of the day. Right now, let's head over to Greg Jarrett to get some numbers on that trading of the day. Greg.
Stocks are still down, Lisa. Apple said sales would miss forecasts. That spooked investors who had hoped for a limited economic impact from the deadly coronavirus that originated in China. Treasury's up. The dollar is stronger as well. Right now, Apple, let's take a quick look at Apple. It's down 2.25%. William Lee at the Milken Institute tells Bloomberg he does not see much of a fast recovery from the coronavirus effect on markets when all of this is over.
The V-shaped upside, I have very doubts about. We don't know the transmission mechanism, and we don't know the time profile of this new virus. The V-shaped assumption that most financial markets are making, I think, is way too optimistic given the lack of facts and the lack of transparency that the Chinese authorities have been having.
We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg Radio. S&P 500's down 0.4%, down 13. Dow's down 0.6%, down 180, and the Nasdaq's down 0.2%, down 17. The 10-year is up 12.30 seconds. The yield is 1.54%. West Texas Intermediate crude is down 0.75% at 51.67 a barrel, with COMEX gold up 1.1% at 1603.80 per ounce. The dollar yen is at 109.81. The euro $1.822, and the British pound $1.30.35. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Bloomberg Markets continues now with Lisa and Paul.
Great, Jared. Thank you so much. Looking at the markets here, S&P down 13, down 177, near the lows of the day. Let's get a sense of what's going on in the world of small to mid caps. We do that with Dave Wilson, Bloomberg Stocks editor. Dave, what are you looking at?
Well, for one thing, the smaller companies are holding up a bit better than the larger ones at the moment. The Russell 2000 index down about 0.3%, and the S&P 500 is lower by 0.4%. That said, the Russell's steepest drop belongs to Geldwen Holding, whose ticker is JELD. The building product maker has dropped more than 12.5%. Earnings trail analyst average estimate in a Bloomberg survey for the fourth straight quarter. Koppers Holdings, ticker KOP, has fallen about 6.5%. The chemical maker's preliminary fourth quarter results showed profit and revenue missed estimates. And ACI Worldwide, ticker ACIW, is down more than 5.5%. The maker of payment processing software was cut to the equivalent of whole from buy at Stevens. Now, one of the Russell's biggest gains belongs to Vonage Holdings, ticker VG. The provider of internet-based phone service has risen almost 16%. Vonage said it's looking at a possible disposal of its consumer unit to focus on business services. And CEVA, ticker CEVA, has climbed more than 13.5%. The chip design company's fourth quarter earnings and sales were well above the average estimates.
Dave Wilson, Bloomberg Stocks editor, thank you so much for being with us. The big news, one of the many big news items of the day, there actually are a lot that are sort of dominating.
In the corporate front, yep.
On the corporate front is the tie-up of Franklin Resources agreeing to buy Legg Mason to create a $1.5 trillion giant. This comes amid a slew of consolidation among asset managers. Annie Massa, covering it all, investing reporter for Bloomberg News, joining us here in our Interactive Brokers studios. Can you just take a step back and look at how significant the wave of consolidation has been in the past, say, 5 to 10 years within the asset management space?
Sure. As you mentioned, I mean, you can really just rattle off these big episodes of mergers and acquisitions in the asset management industry. You saw Invesco buy Oppenheimer Funds. You saw Janus Henderson, Standard Life Aberdeen. And this is just the latest in that wave of consolidation that we're seeing as active managers are trying to, figure out how to navigate an increasingly passive investing world. You just kind of need scale to be able to compete.
So give us the rationale is scale. So are these companies simply saying, I can see the pressure on my revenue line. I don't think that's going away anytime soon. So I just got to get scale and try to rationalize my costs. Is that kind of the play here?
Yeah, if you look back over the past 10 or 15 years, both Legg Mason and Franklin Templeton have seen their assets under management kind of come down from their highs. So now, as you mentioned, you have a $1.5 trillion in assets in these combined firms. It also fills in some gaps for Franklin, particularly on the fixed income and alternatives side.
What's the price tag being viewed as in the market?
The deal is valued at about $4.5 billion.
And is that viewed as too much, too little?
I think it's valued about in line.
So how about when I think of big mutual funds, obviously I start with Fidelity. Do we see Fidelity on the M&A trail often? I can't think of any big deals.
That's a good question. Fidelity has often been one to really go it alone, but Fidelity also has the advantage of being just one, like a giant already. it's really for the slightly like middle size, can't really pass $1 trillion in assets where you're seeing this kind of consolidation. Neither Legg or Franklin was really able to get there on its own. So now tying them up, they can finally get past that $1 trillion in assets kind of mark. It helps because technology is increasingly costly for these asset managers, and if you can spread out some of those costs across all these different assets and then also offer different product lines, it really does help to be more of a big supermarket.
Do you have a sense when you speak to analysts who've been watching this space for a while of who some of the next potential contenders are for potential merger activity?
Yeah, that's a good question. Basically, what we're looking at here is some of these acquisitions that we've really seen in the space have faltered a little bit or not been as successful as they were otherwise thought to be. So I think that that's leading to some questions about whether these deals actually pan out and work. In some cases, like the Janus merger, you actually saw client outflows in the wake of those tie-ups. So it's not always a very beneficial thing in the aftermath. One thing that they mentioned on the conference call is that Legg Mason will kind of maintain the independence of all these different affiliate asset managers that it works with, and they're hoping to hang on to those client assets and stem some of those potential client outflows that way.
You know, when I think about the pressure on the fees and due in large part to this move from active to passive, is that a global phenomenon or is that more in the U.S.?
It is a global phenomenon. I think you're really seeing a lot of this happening in the U.S. because that's where the largest asset managers are based, and that's both on the active side and the passive side.
What about the alternative side? I mean, how much is that the area that people are looking to for the fees and just trying to get scope with respect to passive and then go into, the more liquid securities type of trade?
It's a really good question. Alternatives are becoming so important for pretty much all asset managers. And we saw even last week with Vanguard's foray into private equity, and BlackRock made a similar push into alternatives as well. Even the giants of index investing can't ignore alts. So especially on the active side, a firm like Franklin wants to bulk up in alternatives.
Are we at the early stages or late stages of this consolidation, do you think?
I think that we're still going to continue to see consolidation in this industry. There's so much pressure on fees for both active and passive products, and scale has become so important. It's this barbell where you have to either be a behemoth that offers everything or just so niche, and in between you're going to struggle.
Annie Massa, thanks so much for joining us. Annie Massa, investing reporter for Bloomberg News, joining us here in a Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio with yet another deal in the asset management space driven by, kind of what we've been hearing about in the asset management business for years, which has been pressure on fees, and it's been exacerbated by this movement really over the last 10 plus years from active management to passive management, thereby, again, more pressure on the top line fees and necessitating consolidation, scale, and cost savings.
What's interesting is we haven't really seen a downturn, right? Or a significant protracted downturn. And there's a question of how quickly this merger wave will really accelerate if we do ever get some sort of downturn. I mean, history would suggest that we will at some point, and that's going to be the true test.
Exactly. So we'll see that. But more deals to come in the asset management as per Annie. Right now, let's head down to our 99.1 studios in Washington, D.C. for World and National Headlines with Nathan Haker. Nathan, what do you have?
Well, Paul, China's Hubei province says it's going to start tracking medical purchases to look for coronavirus patients that may have fallen through the cracks. That says the global death toll from the pathogen hits 1,873 and confirmed infections surpass 73,000.
This is now a problem that is of global scale. It's important that every nation state act in a way that is consistent with reducing risk to citizens all across the world.
Secretary of State Mike Pompeo says it took too long to get U.S. medical experts to China, but he says he's hopeful the Chinese government increases transparency. He spoke at a news conference alongside Ethiopia's foreign minister. President Trump is hinting he is ready to sue anyone related to former special counsel Robert Mueller's investigation. Bloomberg's Amy Morris reports from Washington.
In a series of tweets, the president called the Mueller probe a scam and floated the idea of filing lawsuits, saying that he would be suing, quote, everyone all over the place if he weren't president, adding, quote, maybe I still will. He's also arguing for a new trial for his friend Roger Stone, who was convicted on several counts that sprang from the Mueller investigation. Stone is scheduled to be sentenced on Thursday, but the president hasn't yet said if he will pardon Stone or commute his sentence. In Washington, I'm Amy Morris, Bloomberg Radio.
The Trump administration is imposing sanctions on the trading unit of Russia's state-owned oil company. That's for helping Venezuela skirt an oil embargo. The move from the Treasury Department also covers Rosneft's president and chairman. It is all part of the U.S. campaign to push Nicolas Maduro from power in Venezuela and rally global support for main opposition leader Juan Guaido. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. This is Bloomberg.
Our relationship with Asia is simple. Find the most experienced journalists.
These countries will need each other more and more in the future.
Let them gather the best data and experts.
Let's get to Singapore now and our guest.
Then bring everything they find straight to you.
Let's talk about where you are. There's quite a lot of headwinds there too.
Actually, it's not simple. It's just better. Bloomberg Daybreak Asia, tonight at 6 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
When you went car shopping, you meant business. You ace vehicle history searches and test drives. You out-salesman to the salesman. Now you've got your wheels. If you manage that, you can get your retirement plan on track. Visiting aceyourretirement.org can help. With 401k tips and smart saving strategies, you'll have the info you need to get more for your future. Go to aceyourretirement.org, because when it comes to speeding past financial challenges, you're an ace. Brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
In-depth analysis, concise reporting, need-to-know global business news. Around the world and across the markets, Bloomberg connects the dots for decision makers. Stay on top of today's headlines. Follow big breakthroughs in tech. Understand the latest political issues. See how the world's wealthiest are spending their money. Track what's happening in the markets, and much more. Subscribe today to Bloomberg, the global standard for business reporting. Get it all at Bloomberg.com/subscriptions.
Hey, it's me, your cell phone. We need to talk about something serious. I know you love me, I know you like using me wherever you are, but I feel like this isn't working out when you're driving. I know you may think that it's possible to focus both on me and the road, but I just don't feel the same way. I think we should spend time away from each other when you're driving. It's for the best.
Visit StopTextStopWrecks.org. A message brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, Project Yellow Light, and the Ad Council.
Welcome to Cathay Island. We hope you've enjoyed flying Cathay Airways. Oh, and Cathay, congratulations on the Euro Millions win.
Tonight's Euro Millions jackpot is a massive £22 million. That's dream come true money. Euro Millions from the National Lottery. Your numbers make amazing happen. Estimated jackpot. Rules and procedures apply. Players must be 16 or over.
Let's get this right, sir. You didn't see three men dressed as clowns take off in a van with a Renaissance painting because you were distracted by, and I quote, a sporty red compact SUV with a bold mesh grille, a sculpted bonnet with sweeping roofline on diamond-cut alloys.
And beautiful rear haunches.
So, you saw a Jaguar E-Pace. But what about the clowns?
What clowns?
Jaguar E-Pace. Designed to steal attention. Search Jaguar E-Pace.
Whatever job you're searching for, you can find it on LinkedIn. First jobs, flexible jobs, work from home on a Friday jobs, advertising jobs, accounting jobs, HR, PR, even ER jobs, Soho jobs, Shoreditch jobs. Keep me away from the central line jobs. Banking jobs, building jobs, never ever boring jobs. Small jobs, big jobs, lunch in Borough Market jobs, or even voiceover jobs, which is how I ended up recording this ad. Search millions of jobs on LinkedIn and find one meant for you.
Despite never having used them, Alison Peartree was not initially a fan of purple bricks.
Because I heard from my uncle's cousin's neighbour's dog walker they don't have proper estate agents.
But Alison's uncle's cousin's neighbour's dog walker was wrong. Purple Bricks have experienced local agents ready to sell your home.
Turns out Martin from Purple Bricks was very knowledgeable. And he didn't charge commission. I've even recommended him to my sister's boyfriend's auntie's hairdresser, Sharon.
Purple Bricks. Book your free valuation today.
Fixed fee payable on instruction or after 10 months. Viewing service cost extra.
Pancake Day is flipping fun. Pancake Day is Stella. This day will be a yummy one.
'Cause pancakes love Nutella. Pancake Day is nearly here. Gather friends and family to enjoy some delicious pancakes.
on Tuesday the 25th of February. And don't forget, pancakes love Nutella.
It was a Sunday morning when I jumped on the tube
and decided to pop down to Greenwich via
a large indoor jungle.
And when I got there, I was captivated by a sparkling
scary dinosaur just standing there right in front of me.
So off we went to Wembley Park
to look at the colourful fish.
Tap into the wonderful world of off-peak London. Travel in zones 2 to 6 for £1.50. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
£1.50 is an adult off-peak pay-as-you-go fare for a journey not going via Zone 1 on Tube, DLR and most London Overground services. Always touch in and out with the same card or device to pay the right fare.
Rita's Rowdy Enchiladas.
Every time the kids are together, it's always the same. Never a moment's peace. Didn't take me long to work out the trick, though. Shredded chicken and black bean enchiladas with lime, oregano, and my little secret, a bit of smoke and spice with chipotle paste. Hear that? Never failed yet.
Make Rita's Rowdy Enchiladas tonight with Tesco British Chicken. Food Love Stories, brought to you by Tesco.
At Ring, we've reinvented the doorbell. So no matter where you are or what time of day, you can watch over your home and the things you care about. Ring Video Doorbell streams HD video and two-way talk straight to your phone, so you can speak to whoever's at your door from anywhere.
Delivery.
Oh, great. Could you leave it with my neighbour, please?
Sure, no problem.
And it's so simple, you can install it yourself in minutes. See, hear and speak to whoever's at your door from wherever you are with Ring Video Doorbell. Available at ring.com and selected retailers.
Good morning, this is your Southern service to London Victoria. Join in our onboard quiz. Here's our next clue. What C sounds like a handheld party food but keeps you dry and protected from the rain? Not canapes, canopies.
At Southern Railway, we're investing over £7 million into making improvements for you, like canopies, cycle parking and new platform lighting across more of our stations. Find out more and book your tickets at southernrailway.com. Southern Railway, we're with you.
It's headlines and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Stocks are moving into the lows of the day after Apple indicated it would fail to meet its revenue forecast for the current quarter due to the impact of the virus outbreak in China. Tech leads the way down. Meanwhile, Federal Reserve Bank of Dallas President Robert Kaplan says monetary policy is roughly appropriate, and he expects rates to remain on hold through 2020 despite risks posed by the coronavirus. We look at the numbers every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg Radio. S&P 500 is down 0.5% now, down 16. The Dow's down 0.7%, down 200, and the Nasdaq's down 0.25%, down 25. The 10-year is up 12/32 with a yield of 1.54%. West Texas Intermediate crude's down 1.2% at 51.45 a barrel, with COMEX gold up 1.2% at 16.0520 an ounce. The dollar yen 109.81. The euro's $1.0819, and the British pound $1.3021. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. I'm Greg Jarrett.
This is Bloomberg Markets with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
Well, our good friends at Walmart reported earnings this morning. Kind of a mixed bag. The fourth quarter, the all-important holiday quarter, a little bit weaker than expected. But the full-year guidance for 2020 pretty much in line with what the street was looking for. So the net on the stock is up about 0.8% today for Walmart. To get a sense of what's going on at Walmart and all things retail, we turn to our good friend Bert Flickinger, Managing Director, Strategic Resource Group. He joins us here in our Bloomberg Interactive Broker studio. So, Bert, a little bit of a mixed bag out of Walmart. What's your key takeaway going forward with these folks?
A couple things, Paul and Lisa. One, Walmart's insulated because they sell more fresh food, refrigerated, frozen, and fresh than anyone else. So it's about 2/3 of their business. So Walmart, like Costco, which hit a 52-week high in the Bloomberg terminal today, too. Forward-looking, they've both invested tremendously in technology for the last 30 years. So the market's looking at Walmart's CapEx being a little bit less in technology compared to competitive peers. And secondly, that Walmart and Costco have strategically invested in distribution centers and inventory. So despite tariffs, coronavirus, and sourcing more locally within the continental U.S., Walmart has some longer-term advantages for the next couple quarters that most of their competitors don't come close on.
All right, let's put the coronavirus aside because they basically have
not put that into their assumptions in any way. It's unclear how they're going to be dealing with that. Just talk about the fact that they missed expectations when it came to revenues in the 2021 EPS forecast. This has been completely shrugged off by markets, yet this comes after Target also disappointed. I'm wondering how much we can read into this as a trend. Does it say something about the consumer? Does it say something about Amazon.com, rolling up all of the market share away from the Walmarts and the Targets of the world?
Lisa, it says yes to all of the above. It says the Amazon roll-up. It also says despite Target's miss in our pricing studies, Target's still a little bit premium priced. In our pricing studies with Walmart, for the first time in 5 years, Walmart's line price with the low price leaders, Winco in the West, Costco nationally and internationally. So as you and Tom Keene talk about very well frequently, is while Walmart's investing more in lower prices, Walmart's units are up at the same time, as you're presently pointing out. The consumers are facing higher monthly budget expenses in 10 out of the top 11 expenditure areas, everything except gasoline. So rent, tuition, insurance, taxes, et cetera, et cetera. So the consumer's more cash constrained, and as people look at where the consumer's going, Ross Stores on the Bloomberg terminal, 52-week high today. Burlington on the Bloomberg hit a 52-week high today. Lowe's and Home Depot in terms of category dominant earlier today, 52-week high. So the consumers are going where the best prices are, and the best prices are with the big retailers that are off-price, price impact, or destination that have procurement power. But also, I want to make sure to catch key point you referenced is this sustainable? It might be sustainable for a quarter or two of the 52-week highs within retail. Fresh Pet hit a 52-week high today. That's sustainable. Not sure chain retail is sustainable. Not sure Amazon's sustainable.
So let's talk. I know Walmart's having an investor day today, so we'll get some more news out of that throughout the day. But one of the places I always look for Amazon and Target and Target and Walmart to see how they're competing against Amazon is their digital sales. So another 35% growth in the digital sales for Walmart. That's good, but it's slowing a little bit, but still pretty solid.
Digital sales and consumers who historically might have only been able to get to a Walmart once or twice a month. Mark Laurie, ex of Amazon and acquisition by Walmart of Jet, will be able to deliver from Walmart supercenters to 90% of U.S. homes within the continental U.S. And Walmart's brilliantly put FedEx depots within its stores so people can buy at Walmart and ship either within the U.S. or outside the U.S.
At what point do we have to start worrying about the consumer and how much momentum there is if where they're going is Ross Stores, is the discounters?
Lisa, we have to start worrying about the consumer now. The telling period is going to be Memorial Day to Labor Day, where the consumer, as Bloomberg reports, has been traveling in record numbers, spending in record numbers. But looking on the Bloomberg, even before Ryan Newman's tragic death in NASCAR yesterday, NASCAR attendance is way down, and that's a leading indicator. I think he's just a correction.
He's alive. He's in serious condition.
Thank you.
He's alive. He's in serious condition.
Hearts and prayers, and appreciate the timely correction.
Yeah, and it's actually his injuries are not life-threatening after that horrible crash.
Right.
But it seems like, is going to emerge. But really interesting, and thank you so much for being with us, Bert, because this is, I think, one of the big questions when I came in. Walmart disappointing after Target disappointing. A knee-jerk response might be to say, is this concerning? You look under the hood, a lot of factors at play, but certainly heading into this period of the year, important to watch to see if it makes a trend. And we will have you back to discuss that. Bert Flickinger, Managing Director at Strategic Resource Group, joining us here in our interactive broker studios. And interesting to see how Walmart shares really resilient after missing estimates on a whole variety, actually gaining today. They're up 0.8%. Not a massive gain, but given the fact that the broader market move is lower and that they missed expectations and that they still are gaining, is somewhat notable. Coming up, we're going to take a look also at the retail segment in the sustainable sector. We're going to be speaking with Seventh Generation's Chief Executive Officer, plus a look at Apple and the withdrawal of their revenue projection on the heels of the coronavirus spread. This is Bloomberg Markets.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. A sour apple is leading the stock averages 1/4 to 2/3% lower. The Dow down 196, the Nasdaq 22, the S&P 16. Apple blames the coronavirus for its warning that sales won't measure up to analysts' hopes this quarter, due both to disruptions to supply and demand. Stores in China empty or closed, and the factories that are starting up unable to ramp up production quickly. Shares are down more than 2%. Walmart saw a gloomy holiday season, with comparable store sales missing their mark, in part because of a shorter holiday shopping season, a warmer than usual winter in some places, and no super hot toys or electronics on everybody's holiday list. Shares, though, are up because Walmart figures things will bounce back this year. The space tourism industry getting a little more real now. SpaceX says it will fly up to 4 paying customers under an agreement that opens the way for space tourism aboard a vehicle built for astronauts. No price specified. Joan Doniger, Bloomberg Radio.
If you love them enough to listen to them practice the same song on tuba, please be done. Over and over and over and over and over, then surely you'll check NHTSA.gov/the-right seat to make sure they're correctly buckled in the back seat.
Sounds good, honey.
Check today at NHTSA.gov/the-right seat. Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council. In-depth analysis, concise reporting, need-to-know global business news. Around the world and across the markets, Bloomberg connects the dots for decision makers. Stay on top of today's headlines. Follow big breakthroughs in tech. Understand the latest political issues. See how the world's wealthiest are spending their money. Track what's happening in the markets, and much more. Subscribe today to Bloomberg, the global standard for business reporting. Get it all at Bloomberg.com/subscriptions.
At the Bank of Santander, they've created Stan, a smart bot that can predict the future of remortgaging.
All right, Stan, will my mortgage rate go up?
1955 was the last time Newcastle won the cup.
No, try not to mumble.
Playing, let's get ready to rumble.
Meanwhile, at Santander, they can't predict your future, but they'll help secure it with great mortgage rates fixed for up to 10 years. See what's possible at Santander.
Early repayment charges apply. Lending subject to status and criteria. Your home may be repossessed if you do not keep up repayments on your mortgage.
Whatever job you're searching for, you can find it on LinkedIn. First jobs, flexible jobs, work from home on a Friday jobs, advertising jobs, accounting jobs, HR, PR, even ER jobs, Soho jobs, Shoreditch jobs. Keep me away from the central line jobs. Banking jobs, building jobs, never ever boring jobs. Small jobs, big jobs, lunch in Borough Market jobs, or even voiceover jobs, which is how I ended up recording this ad. Search millions of jobs on LinkedIn and find one meant for you.
Pancake Day is flipping fun. Pancake Day is stellar. This day will be a yummy one.
'Cause pancakes love Nutella.
Pancake Day is nearly here. Gather friends and family to enjoy some delicious pancakes on Tuesday, the 25th of February. And don't forget, pancakes love Nutella.
At Ring, we've reinvented the doorbell. So no matter where you are or what time of day, you can watch over your home and the things you care about. Ring Video Doorbell streams HD video and two-way talk straight to your phone, so you can speak to whoever's at your door from anywhere.
Delivery.
Oh, great. Could you leave it with my neighbour, please?
Sure, no problem.
And it's so simple, you can install it yourself in minutes. See, hear and speak to whoever's at your door from wherever you are with Ring Video Doorbell. Available at ring.com and selected retailers.
You've downloaded your boarding pass. You've packed your suitcases in good time. You're looking forward to hitting the slopes in Val d'Isère. And skiing there couldn't be better, with 5 centimetres of snow on the way. Now you just need to get to Gatwick Airport with Gatwick Express. Our direct service from London Victoria means we don't waste time stopping at other stations or with rush hour traffic. Our trains get you straight there. Buy 2 tickets at gatwickexpress.com and save 35% with WebDuo. And the best bit? There's no booking fee. Now all that's left to do is enjoy your holiday. Offer on selected tickets. Terms and conditions apply.
Major League Baseball is back. Are you ready to unlock the 2020 season with TuneIn Premium?
And this one is gone! It hits the foul pole!
Be there from day one with every single game of spring training, rivalry games, split squads, Cactus League, Grapefruit League. TuneIn Premium has it all. Then, when the pitch count starts for real, experience live and on-demand access to every game, everywhere you go, from opening day to the World Series. Don't miss out on the action. Search Premium to upgrade today.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
Are you curious what others are listening to on TuneIn? Head to the trending section under Browse to see the most popular stations and podcasts among TuneIn listeners right now. Check it out. You might just discover something new for yourself.
Broadcasting live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119. And around the globe, the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Markets.
Coming up, we're going to speak to the CEO of Seventh Generation, which is a company that's been formulating plant-based home care products that are safe and that actually work. Plus, we're going to check in on Apple Computer revenue warning today on the coronavirus. We'll get the latest details. But first, let's go to Greg Jarrett of Bloomberg News for a Bloomberg Business Flash. Greg.
Well, thank you, Paul. Stocks are down after the aforementioned Apple indication it would miss forecast. That spooked investors who had hoped for a limited economic impact from the deadly coronavirus that originated in China. Treasury is up, the dollar is stronger. Peter Oppenheimer, Goldman Sachs chief global equity strategist, tells Bloomberg there is a lot of uncertainty that will continue around the coronavirus effect.
Our expectation, our central assumption, is that the rate of infection does peak in the first quarter, and so some of the hit in the first quarter then reverses again in the quarters that follow. And so the overall effect on global GDP is not that big. But I don't think we can underestimate the effect on companies that are particularly affected, as Selena said, by the supply chain effect.
We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day here on Bloomberg Radio. S&P 500 is down 0.6% now, down 20. We're looking at session lows as the Dow's down 0.8%, down 250, and the NASDAQ is down 0.4%, down 36. The 10-year is up 12/30 seconds with a yield of 1.54%. West Texas Intermediate crude is down about 1% at 51.51 a barrel, with COMEX gold up 1.25%. It's 16.06 even per ounce. The dollar yen, 109.81. The euro, $1.0816. And the British pound, $1.3022. Porsche has confirmed one of its new Taycan electric cars has caught fire in the garage of a U.S. customer, making the first such incident since Volkswagen sports car division started deliveries of the sedan last year. Porsche says that it was notified of the fire on Sunday and is investigating. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. I'm Greg Jarrett.
You're listening to Bloomberg Markets with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
Yesterday, Jeff Bezos, who is, of course, the founder of Amazon, announced that he is committing $10 billion of his own wealth to fighting climate change, his biggest philanthropic effort so far. And it comes after a substantial pressure from within the company from workers saying that the company is not doing enough to fight climate change. But it really raises a question. What can the biggest companies do? What kind of meaningful changes could they make to reduce their carbon emissions and fight the rising climate? Joey Bergstein joins us now, the Chief Executive Officer of Seventh Generation, which is based in Burlington, Vermont. It was acquired by Unilever, but it really has been one of the biggest speakers out in terms of corporate responsibility in this area. Joey, I'm really glad you're joining us today. I want to get your perspective on this $10 billion commitment that Jeff Bezos made. Where do you see the greatest need for that kind of money to actually combat some of what we're seeing with respect to emissions?
Thank you very much for having me on, Lisa. It's great to be with you and really applaud the commitment that Bezos has made to addressing what is the biggest crisis of our time. And it's really important from our perspective that companies do take real and meaningful action to address climate. As we look at what's going on in the world around us, we're really focused in three different areas. One is the products that we make and ensuring that we're creating products that actually have the low carbon footprint. A great example of that is an ultra concentrated laundry detergent that we launched over a year ago that we sell on Amazon, and appreciate the support that we get from the Amazon team on that part of our business. We tax ourselves an internal carbon tax that we can then invest to address our own carbon footprint. And then I would say the third thing is that we're really looking at how do we clean up the energy grid in this country, and would love to see investments being made much more broadly by companies across the U.S. to really clean up our own energy grid. What we've discovered is that when you look at our full carbon footprint, from making this stuff or growing the ingredients on a farm through to the production process and getting it into the hands of people to use, actually 90% of our carbon footprint comes when you and I are washing and drying our clothes at home. And as clean as we can make our own operations, the only way to truly address the impact of business is to clean up the energy grid. And that, for me, is the top priority for us in this country.
So, Joey, how do you do that with a company? Just take your company. How do you think about and try to address the energy grid? That just seems like a huge issue that might be outside of your natural kind of day-to-day business.
Yeah, it's monumental, actually. And it is outside of our day-to-day business. So a lot of the work we're doing in that space has been around advocacy and working with grassroots organizations across the country to try to cities and states to make commitments to clean energy by 2030. We think with those commitments in place that these cities and states will actually take the action needed to address the energy grid. In 2018, we set out working with Sierra Club and other grassroots organizations to try to get 100 cities to make such commitments. By the end of the year, 108 cities have made commitments. And I think we're up to over 150 cities and over 7 states making these kinds of commitments.
Joey,
and so that's really the role of our advocacy work to try to address this situation.
It's a big question and a big concern for a lot of investors who are trying to follow ESG requirements. And there's a question that gets raised, especially with this sort of $10 billion commitment that sort of thrusts this whole effort into focus today. How much can we tell whether a company is just paying lip service to the idea versus actually doing something meaningful with reducing their footprint?
That's a great question. I think it really starts with making big, bold commitments, because addressing a crisis of this magnitude doesn't happen just by business as usual kinds of action. So I applaud companies' commitments. It's also really important to consistently report on what actions companies are taking. So we publish an annual sustainability report. We track ourselves against every single commitment that we make and how we make progress year after year. And I would expect that other companies are doing the same things. It's really not enough just to make the commitment, but to also be very transparent about what actions are actually being put in place.
Hey, Joey, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate your thoughts on this important topic, and a topic that's growing in influence. Joey Bergstein, CEO of Seventh Generation, based in Burlington, Vermont, joining us on the phone. It's interesting to think about, environmental, social governance. It's becoming a bigger part of investors' view of companies and industries. And there's a lot of data out there. There's a lot of data on the Bloomberg terminal that tracks some of the metrics as it relates to ESG. And we're hearing more and more investors, whether it's hedge funds, mutual funds, and institutional investors, really focusing on ESG.
Yeah, I mean, I do think, though, we've moved past the point of just saying, okay, what have you put out there that you're doing to fight climate change, into, okay, well, how effective are some of these measures? And I think, when you look at Amazon, for example, there's been a lot of pressure internally about changing some of the practices of the company. And then there's a question of how Jeff Bezos is even going to deploy $10 billion, because a lot of these upstart organizations are small.
Yeah, exactly right. But that $10 billion is a big number, gets everyone's attention. Right now, let's head down to our 99.1 studios in Washington, D.C. for World and National Headlines with Nathan Hager. Nathan.
Paul, China's Hubei province plans to start using medicine purchases to try to track coronavirus cases it might have missed. So far, more than 73,000 people have been infected around the world. Almost 1,900 have died, the vast majority of them in Hubei.
In the United States right now, the risk is minimal. This day, it's minimal. But if it turns into a global pandemic, we could have a significant problem. And that's the reason why We're taking it very seriously.
Dr. Anthony Fauci is director of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases. Former New York City Mayor Michael Bloomberg will take part in his first debate in the Democratic presidential race tomorrow night. Bloomberg met the party's qualifying threshold in a new poll that puts him in second place nationally behind Bernie Sanders. Leslie Vinjamuri with Chatham House tells Bloomberg Surveillance the senator from Vermont is still vulnerable.
He has seemingly been hitting, a ceiling of 26%. If he can't really sustainably push above that, it becomes even more important to see who will capture the moderate side.
And we should mention Michael Bloomberg is the founder and majority owner of Bloomberg LP, the parent company of Bloomberg Radio. President Trump is back to tweeting about the Roger Stone case. In a series of messages this morning, he hinted at suing everyone involved in former special counsel Robert Mueller's Russia investigation. The president just granted a full pardon to Edward DiBartolo Jr., the former San Francisco 49ers owner, pleaded guilty in 1998 to a gambling fraud scandal after paying $400,000 to then Louisiana Governor Edwin Edwards in exchange for a riverboat gambling license. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. This is Bloomberg.
Why has J.D. Power ranked Commonwealth Financial Network #1 in independent advisor satisfaction among financial investment firms for the 6th straight time? We think it comes down to one thing: you. Because it's your input and feedback that keeps us focused on what's most important to you and your clients and continually pushes us to be the best we can be. Maybe that's why we receive top marks in every category of the J.D. Power 2019 Advisor Satisfaction Survey. They named us #1 in client support, #1 in firm leadership, #1 in operational support, #1 in compensation, #1 in professional development support, and #1 in technology support. Ready to partner with the best? Call Commonwealth at 866-462-3638 or visit commonwealth.com and feel the power. Member FINRA SIPC, a registered investment advisor. For 2019 J.D. Power award information, visit jdpower.com/awards.
Vatsal Shah is Senior Project Engineer at Mott MacDonald, a global engineering consultancy with more than 16,000 employees. He earned his PhD at New Jersey Institute of Technology, and as an adjunct professor is helping NJIT students explore emerging technologies.
My focus is renewable markets, emerging technologies, the idea of floating cities. What are we doing to develop that? What will happen to the city on the water? Well, you're going to have waves hitting it. You're going to have solar. How are you going to develop plants? How are you going to develop vegetation and farming? That sort of thought process happens at NJIT. We actually plan out what will the city look like. How do we develop that? So in 10 years, we're actually ready to take on those challenges when we have our first development in the water. NJIT also has been doing a lot of work in self-healing materials, so taking the polymers and the new material that we have in our material sciences departments and putting them into things like concrete, things like steel, reinforcing our soil.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
Whatever job you're searching for, you can find it on LinkedIn. First jobs, flexible jobs, work from home on a Friday jobs, advertising jobs, accounting jobs, HR, PR, even ER jobs, Soho jobs, Shoreditch jobs. Keep me away from the central line jobs. Banking jobs, building jobs, never ever boring jobs. Small jobs, big jobs, lunch in Borough Market jobs, or even voiceover jobs, which is how I ended up recording this ad. Search millions of jobs on LinkedIn and find one meant for you.
At Ring, we've reinvented the doorbell. So no matter where you are or what time of day, you can watch over your home and the things you care about. Ring Video Doorbell streams HD video and two-way talk straight to your phone, so you can speak to whoever's at your door from anywhere.
Delivery.
Oh, great. Could you leave it with my neighbour, please?
Sure, no problem.
And it's so simple, you can install it yourself in minutes. See, hear and speak to whoever's at your door from wherever you are with Ring Video Doorbell. Available at ring.com and selected retailers.
Get prepped for your paint job at TradePoint. Right now with a huge 3 for 2 on coloured emulsion. And if you have loyalty discount, you'll get this on top. Don't miss 3 for 2 on coloured emulsion at TradePoint. Excludes white paint and ready-mix trade paint. Every third item per single transaction is descending price order free. Ends 24th of February. See tradepoint.co.uk.
Welcome aboard Europe's 169th safest airline.
You were like my 169th biggest crush in school.
Your total body age is 169.
The number 169 never screamed glamour until now. Get the Toyota Aygo X-Play for only £169 deposit, then £169 a month with 0% APR representative. Just go. Aygo.
0% APR representative on new sales of Aygo X-Play over 48 months. £169 per month. Customer deposit of £169 when proposed and approved via Access Toyota by 31st of March 2020. £3,311.25p optional final payment. Subject to status to over 18s. Indemnities may be required. Conditions apply. Toyota Financial Services.
The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
Upgrade to TuneIn Premium and get over 45 commercial-free music stations. You'll also get live commercial-free news, plus live play-by-play games from NFL, MLB, NBA, and NHL. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
When you're not listening to your team, take it to the end zone, the rim, or the net. Keep up with the biggest moments in sports by following TuneIn on social media.
Block, Cook into the end zone for the touchdown.
From reminders of the live top games to tips of the best sports stations and podcasts.
Welcome to Undisputed. We are live from Los Angeles. I'm Jenny Taft here with Skip Bayless.
Follow at TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn.
In case you didn't know, TuneIn lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio, except you can hear them from anywhere. If you want to find a station from somewhere else in the world, navigate to the By Location section under Browse. Keep exploring with TuneIn.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
Major League Baseball is back. Are you ready to unlock the 2020 season with TuneIn Premium?
And this one is gone! It hits the foul pole!
Be there from day one with every single game of spring training, rivalry games, split squads, Cactus League, Grapefruit League. TuneIn Premium has it all. Then, when the pitch count starts for real, experience live and on-demand access to every game, everywhere you go, from opening day to the World Series. Don't miss out on the action. Search Premium to upgrade today.
Headlines and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
The S&P is extending its losses heading into the biggest drop in 2 weeks as Apple warned of production and demand disruptions due to the epidemic. Right now, as we look at Apple, it's down 2.6%. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day here on Bloomberg Radio. S&P 500 is down 0.7%, down 23. The Dow's down 0.9%, down 272. And the NASDAQ is down 0.5%, down 50. 10 years up 12.30 seconds. The yield is 1.54%. West Texas Intermediate crude's down over 1% at 51.51 a barrel, while COMEX gold's up 1.3% at 1607.80 an ounce. The dollar yen is at 109.79. The euro $1.814, and the British pound $1.30.15. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash. I'm Greg Jarrett.
You're listening to Bloomberg Markets with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
Well, I think the function of the day on the Bloomberg terminal is SPLC. That's the supply chain function. So if you put in the ticker for Apple Computer and SPLC, you're going to see that it has 659 suppliers, Apple does, and Apple has 298 customers. So when you think about the news today that Apple's cutting its revenue forecast, it really calls into question that global technology supply chain and what might be the impact going forward from the coronavirus. To help us break it all down, we welcome John Butler. He's a senior telecom analyst for Bloomberg Intelligence, joining us here in our Bloomberg Interactive Broker studio. So, John, let's just start with the revenue picture there. What's really driving this from Apple? Because it's the second time we've gotten a revenue forecast concern from them, but it's still relatively rare for Apple.
It is relatively rare, and I'll preface my comments by saying the coronavirus impact, just like SARS or MERS or any other outbreaks we've had globally, is temporary. And I think for Apple, you'll see a rebound after the rate of new infections begins to decline, which typically from onset to peak, the peak rate is typically 10 weeks. Having said that, China is 16% of Apple's sales, so with half of China shut indoors, that's a real problem for them. Add to that the online channel in China is not nearly as big for them as it is in the rest of the world. Most people in China are getting their iPhones and Apple products through local retailers and Apple stores. And so this quarantine effect really is going to hit this quarter and maybe even bleed into next. And then the second thing, Paul, that you touched on is almost, I think all the iPhones are made in China, mostly in a town called Zhengzhou, or iPhone City as it's known. And Foxconn, the assembler, is running at about 40% strength now in its factories. And their call is that they'll be up to 80% by next month, early March, hopefully. But we'll see. It's sort of an unknown, but again, I want to stress sort of a temporary impact for them, or headwind.
And that was certainly what was emphasized in the release that Apple put out, withdrawing the revenue projection for the first quarter. There is a question, though. They also said that the decline was seen both on the supply side and the demand side. Interesting what you say about the online not being as much of an option in China. In order to buy, you have to go to a store for the most part. I'm wondering, though, at what point demand will be more permanently impaired. I mean, if you have all of these people who are not getting paid or not having a job, service jobs getting impacted, people not going out to lunch because they're just staying inside, at what point does that become a more protracted issue?
It is an issue, I think. I heard you point it out earlier in a show this morning, and I thought, that really is true, that sometimes when people have an adjustment to their income, whether it's an event like coronavirus or a more permanent event, it can affect purchase decisions. So there could be some lost sales, but again, I think it's confined to the outbreak. I don't think it is a symptom of a broader demand problem that may be evolving in the region or overall.
Well, and then there's this other question where in China there is more ammunition to support the economy amid this downdraft due to the coronavirus, making it more temporary, less so in emerging markets within Asia. And people are saying they don't have the money necessarily to fight this effectively. And that could be a more significant source of a decline in demand. Anyone talking about that, or is that such an infinitesimal part of the business?
It's a small part of the business overall. I mean, China's not, to be clear. China was last quarter about 16% of sales. It actually grew last quarter. So in a way, coronavirus couldn't have happened at a worse time for them, because not only is China beginning to recover from a sales growth standpoint, but the stars seem to have aligned for the iPhone, right? They're facing easy comps with last year. They're coming out with a new low-cost iPhone next month, and then a 5G iPhone in September. So there's a lot happening in terms of positives for the iPhone this year. So to have this happen now is disappointing. But again, I want to stress, I don't think it sets up any sort of permanent dislocation in demand for them.
So, John, you mentioned that lower cost iPhone. I know that was a big part of the bullish call for Apple, that it's going to address a part of the market that Apple really hasn't had a good product, and that's important for China and India's of the world. So they say they're still going to get this out next month, that this is not going to impact that?
So that actually was a call out of Bloomberg News that I saw this morning, an article saying that Apple is in fact tracking to a March launch for the device. Apple subsequently put out an invite to a special event on, I'm going to say, March 31st. But it is at the very end of March, and I suspect that will mark the launch of that new low-cost device. Keep in mind, Apple does have some flexibility in terms of its production to shift to other regions that aren't affected, I hate to say yet, but aren't affected yet by coronavirus. which gives them some flexibility.
Yeah, because we started talking about that when we had the trade issues and the ability of companies like Apple to move some of the production out of China. But I thought the conclusion was that's going to take a long time.
It does take a long time, and which is why we're having a miss this quarter, is they haven't been able to just pivot on a dime and move that production. Particularly the assembly of iPhones is done by skilled labor. And so it's tough to just redirect to a new region. You can't train people overnight. And so we are seeing disruption now. My hunch is this will probably follow the same bell curve as SARS. And so hopefully by early next month, mid-month maybe at the latest, we'll begin to see that rate of new infections begin to decline.
John, just 20 seconds here. I'm wondering, what's the tipping point for when the temporary disruption becomes something more significant?
I think if you see the meaningful spread of this virus beyond China and into markets, I mean, beyond a handful of cases, but really getting, like it is in China, tough to control, then I think you have a broader problem that's going to be more impactful to the whole year for not just Apple, but I think every company.
John Butler, thank you so much for being with us. John Butler, Senior Telecom Services and Equipment Analyst for Bloomberg Intelligence, joining us here in our interactive broker studios with important insight on Apple's withdrawal of their revenue projection for the first quarter. And certainly Apple is shaking off a lot of the declines that perhaps people had expected off the lows heading into the open, but still down 2.8%. But I mean, to be clear, that comes after a tremendous rally in the past 12 months, an absolute astronomical...
Up 88% or something.
88%. Yep. You got it, exactly. Yep. Coming up, we've got Bloomberg Balance of Power. It's going to dig into the debates that are expected for tomorrow night in Nevada. That is all coming up. This is Bloomberg.
In addition to Bloomberg Radio, you can catch the latest news and biggest newsmakers on Bloomberg Television. Look for us on DirecTV Channel 353 or check your local listings. Interconnect.
They don't chant your name when you give blood or sing songs about you. But patients and their families will remember you forever. Because your blood can change their lives. We need more blood donors in Tooting, the West End and Edgware. Bleed for London. Join us today at blood.co.uk.
At Ring, we've reinvented the doorbell. So no matter where you are or what time of day, you can watch over your home and the things you care about. Ring Video Doorbell streams HD video and two-way talk straight to your phone, so you can speak to whoever's at your door from anywhere.
Delivery.
Oh, great. Could you leave it with my neighbour, please?
Sure, no problem.
And it's so simple, you can install it yourself in minutes. See, hear and speak to whoever's at your door from wherever you are with Ring Video Doorbell. Available at ring.com and selected retailers.
It might still be cold and dark outside, but at least a new phone can brighten things up. You can get an epic iPhone 8 with a 12-megapixel camera at an epic price. At Tesco Mobile, you can get the iPhone 8 for only $19.99 a month. That's a saving of £90. So go in store or search Tesco Mobile. Tesco Mobile. Every little helps.
Ends 23rd of February, saving £2.50 per month over 36 months. Was £22.49. 36-month credit and rolling monthly usage agreements required. Subject to status phase. Policy applies. See tescomobile.com/terms.
Having to deal with financial stuff can make you feel... Ah! But at Money Supermarket, we make you feel... Ah! That's because we go further to help you get money car. We don't just compare. We cut prices to help you get better car insurance deals. Get money car. Money Supermarket.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
Ah, finally another commercial, said no one ever. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade now and get over 45 commercial-free music stations.
World, 24 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters in New York to our TV and radio audiences worldwide, I'm David Weston. Welcome to Balance of Power, where the world of politics meets the world of business. On the brief today from Hong Kong, Sophie Kamarudin on the state of the coronavirus. Alex Webb from London on Apple's taking down sales estimates as the virus hits supply chains and demand. And from Washington, Kevin Cirilli on a Nevada debate this week that will include Michael R. Bloomberg. So let's start over in Hong Kong. Thank you once again for all your great reporting over there, Sophie. Give us a sense of what's going on. As I understand, there's a lot of monitoring going on out in Hubei province.
Yeah, in Hubei and across the country. On Tuesday, China reported the lowest number of new cases since announcing their revised methodology to detect infections. And as we've noted, the government has increased its restrictions on movements of people across the nation. And in Hubei, where some 60 million people remain on lockdown, the government there plans to sweep for unidentified patients by tracking purchases of cough or fever medicines that have been bought since January 20th. And here in Hong Kong, testing for the virus, that will include outpatients as well as those in emergency wards. And on Tuesday, the city reported one new case of the coronavirus, bringing the total to 61. Also, David, I want to highlight we're getting some data giving us a bit more insight into how the economy here in Hong Kong has been affected not only by the virus, but also by the ongoing protests. The jobless rate climbed in January for a fourth straight month, hitting the highest level since 2016. Construction, consumption, and tourist-related sectors, they were particularly hard hit here in Hong Kong.
I'm glad you mentioned this, because obviously this is first and foremost a human tragedy. We want to always recognize that. At the same time, there are real economic effects. You mentioned Hong Kong. We had HSBC announce they're going to lay a lot of people off. What's going on with the economy, not just in Hong Kong, but in China right now? Is it ground to a halt to a large degree?
Well, we've had some estimates by the likes of Bloomberg Intelligence seeing that 40 to 50% of China's economy was open for business last week, and factories are still taking time to come online. And we've had several companies indicate how they have been affected, Apple just being one of the latest when it comes to its outlook. I also want to highlight HSBC, what it had to say regarding the virus, saying it does see a headwind there, and in the most extreme scenario, the bank does see the outbreak continuing potentially into the second half, which could make for $600 million in additional loan losses for HSBC. But the bank is still able to look past the outbreak as it aims to further focus its efforts here in Asia after the region generated about half of its revenue back in 2019, David.
Okay, thank you once again so much to Sophie Kamarudin over in Hong Kong. Now let's turn to one of those companies that Sophie mentioned. Alex Webb is over in London with a story on Apple. So we had this announcement Apple's going to take down its revenue numbers because of this. Why is this a big surprise? Didn't we know there were supply chain problems out in Hubei?
We did, but Apple had at least attempted to build that into its forecast for the March quarter, the three months through March. It had predicted revenue of between $63 and $67 billion. Now it's saying that it's not even going to hit the lower end of that range. It hasn't also, which is creating a certain amount of anxiety, re-specified the range, which implies that it doesn't necessarily know when demand is going to recover. And ultimately here there are two pieces. There's the demand and the supply side, because people haven't been able to leave their homes, therefore buy phones over, for example, the quite lucrative Chinese New Year period. But it's also made it a bit harder for Apple to hire the people to work in their factories. And it is just in the middle of a production ramp right now. There's expected to be a new lower cost iPhone coming next month sometime. When those new products come out, it brings in hundreds of thousands of people from all around China to work at its main production hubs. And it's been harder to do that because of the quarantining effect and the greater difficulty to travel in that part of the world.
Yeah, a new iPhone, but you need people to make them first is the problem. And Alex, you just mentioned it. Apple really isn't giving us a range going forward. But do we have a sense of the process? What's going to be involved for them to get these suppliers back up and running when, in fact, they can?
It's really about, how travel evolves, the ability to get people in, both into their own factories, but also, as you suggest, get the supply chain flowing from their suppliers. Now, the kind of higher tech pieces of the supply chain, not least the makers of semiconductors. A lot of that manufacturing is actually done outside China. So for those guys, it's not so much of a constraint. But it might also be, there might be difficulties for them because they're unable to import their goods or export their goods to China. And in the kind of lower end gear, just, the cases for the iPhone, some of the circuit boards, getting those will perhaps be is still quite hard, and Apple is trying very hard to improve that situation.
Okay, Alex, thank you so much for reporting from London. That's Alex Webb, our colleague from Bloomberg Opinion. And now we turn to Kevin Cirilli and politics back here in the United States. He's in Washington, of course. So, Kevin, we have a little bit of a change now. We're going to Nevada. We're going to have a debate, and then we're going to have caucuses. A little bit of change. Our founder of this company and majority owner is now going to be on the debate stage.
Former New York City Mayor Michael Bloomberg is set to make his Democratic debate debut in Nevada. Interesting, he will not be competing significantly in the Nevada caucus. It comes at a time in which his political rivals have really sharpened their attacks, David, against Bloomberg. It also comes at a time in which the president has also sharpened his attacks against him as well. Now, Senator Bernie Sanders, according to sources connected to his campaign, say that they are very much looking forward to drawing an economic as well as a policy contrast to Bloomberg. It also comes when former Vice President Joe Biden is facing questions about the longevity of his campaign. Bloomberg has not faced a debate. He has not really gone into the fray, so to speak, as it would stand. But his campaign says that their strategy is going to be to really compete on Super Tuesday.
But Kevin, take it forward to the caucus where Michael Bloomberg is not going to be competing. Are we confident that they can pull off that caucus after the Iowa experience? Because I hear some complications there, even in Nevada.
Well, look, I mean, it's a great question in terms of election security. We all covered the debacle that was in Iowa as it relates to the caucus. An entirely different apparatus is going to be looking after Nevada. But it's a great question in terms of what happens. There just seems to be a lot of volatility in this race. But from the Sanders and Buttigieg perspective, they feel that they have emerged as the two frontrunners following the last several weeks of the race.
Okay, we'll find out Saturday night. Thank you so much to Kevin Cirilli in Washington. And now it's time to check in on the markets and see how they're reacting, if they are, to today's top stories. Joining us now is Kayla Line. So I think probably coronavirus.
Coronavirus and Apple is a big one here. Yeah. So that revenue warning from Apple, remember, that is one of the biggest companies there is. It has a 4.7% weighting in the S&P 500. So as Apple goes, the broader indexes usually go. And with Apple down nearly 3%, that is really dragging on tech stocks in particular, but also the S&P 500, which is right around the lows of the session, down about 0.7%. And beyond just the fact that it's a stock moving, it's one of a number of companies we've heard from recently warning about the implications of the coronavirus. And that's raising some fresh concerns about the ultimate impact it is going to have. As a result, you're seeing investors kind of skewing away from equities more towards safer assets like U.S. Treasuries and gold.
And as you suggest, Kaylee, it's not just Apple. I mean, we have the stocks as well. We always look at those to see how we're doing. How are we doing?
Not well. The stocks index is now down about 2%. 29 of 30 stocks within that index are lower. And the semiconductors are really being hit with kind of a double whammy today, because you do have Apple on the one hand. That is taking Apple suppliers like Skyworks, which gets about 50% of its revenue from Apple, lower. But then you also have fresh trade concerns. Reports overnight that the U.S. is considering new trade restrictions on U.S. chip gear, as clamping down more on Huawei, and that's affecting other companies like Lam Research, KLA, which are both down about 4% today. So they're kind of getting hit on both ends here.
Okay, Kelly, thank you so much for the report on the markets. That's Kelly Lyons. And now we turn to Mark Crumpton for Bloomberg First Word News. Mark?
David, a viral outbreak that began in China has infected more than 73,000 people globally. The death toll is approaching 1,900. One of those fatalities, a senior doctor at a hospital in Wuhan where the outbreak began. The United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres says the outbreak is, quote, not out of control, but is still what he calls a very dangerous situation. The United States is slapping sanctions on a unit of Russian oil giant Rosneft for helping Venezuela evade an embargo on its oil. Senior administration officials warned today that anyone in the world doing business with Rosneft could also be sanctioned. It is part of a U.S. campaign to push Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro to step down. The corruption trial of Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu will begin March 17th, 2 weeks after national elections. Netanyahu is charged with bribery and fraud, accused of accepting lavish gifts from wealthy friends and scheming with media moguls to trade regulatory favors for positive news coverage. The Prime Minister failed to secure victory in a pair of deadlocked elections last year. The jury in the Harvey Weinstein rape trial has begun deliberating. At least 100 women have accused the former movie mogul of sexual abuse. But this trial involves accusations from 2 women. Weinstein says any sexual conduct was consensual. He could face life in prison if convicted. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in over 120 countries. I'm Mark Crumpton. This is Bloomberg. David?
Thanks so much, Mark. Coming up, we talk Nevada politics and a newly expanded debate with our panel. This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and on radio.
For centuries, Welsh farmers have been perfecting the balance between maintaining the spectacular landscapes of Wales while producing delicious lamb and beef. Lucky for us, we have everything we need from the elements: grass, rainwater, and a whole lot of pride. Sustainability is key as we continue to work in harmony with our surroundings to bring you a plate that's uniquely Welsh. It's in the taste. Learn more at eatwelshlamandwelshbeef.com.
Welcome to Cathay Island. We hope you've enjoyed flying Cathay Airways. Oh, and Cathay, congratulations on the Euro Millions win.
Tonight's Euro Millions jackpot is a massive £22 million. That's dream come true money. Euro Millions from the National Lottery. Your numbers make amazing happen. Estimated jackpot. Rules and procedures apply. Players must be 16 or over.
A half-price dream holiday. Wouldn't want to miss that. A takeaway for free. Wouldn't want to miss that. And 30 gigs data for just £10 a month on Smarty Mobile. You definitely don't want to miss that. Our Smarty SIM comes packed with 30 gigs of data and unlimited calls and texts for just £10 a month on a 1-month plan. That's why Smarty won Best Value SIM-only network in the U-Switch Mobile Awards 2020. Don't miss out. Search Smarty Mobile. Smarty. Simple, honest mobile. Smarty.co.uk.
Whatever job you're searching for, you can find it on LinkedIn. First jobs, flexible jobs, work from home on a Friday jobs, advertising jobs, accounting jobs, HR, PR, even ER jobs, Soho jobs, Shoreditch jobs. Keep me away from the central line jobs. Banking jobs, building jobs, never ever boring jobs. Small jobs, big jobs, lunch in Borough Market jobs, or even voiceover jobs, which is how I ended up recording this ad. Search millions of jobs on LinkedIn and find one meant for you.
For gentlemen who value the quality of an exquisitely made shoe, Jones Bootmaker Master Shoemakers introduce the world-exclusive collection by Loke. Experience the comfort of the cushioned leather footbed and the sustainable, repairable Goodyear welted sole. The world-exclusive comfort collection by Jones Bootmaker and Loke, handmade in Britain. Available at Bow Lane, Broad Street, Fenchurch Street, German Street, Canary Wharf and stores nationwide. Or order online at jonesbootmaker.com.
Pancake Day is flipping fun. Pancake Day is Stella. This day will be a yummy one.
'Cause pancakes love Nutella. Pancake Day is nearly here. Gather friends and family to enjoy some delicious pancakes on Tuesday the 25th of February. And don't forget, pancakes love Nutella.
Good book. Refreshing drink. 6 degrees outside. 35 in here. This really is the life.
Could the gentleman in aisle 2 please remove himself from the hot tub?
So much for try before you buy.
Well, at Ford, you can. Test drive and purchase any new Ford car or commercial vehicle this February, and we'll give you an additional £500 off the recommended retail price. Search Ford Test Drive Promotion. Retail and small business customers only. Contract and registered by 29th of February 2020 at participating Ford dealers. Excludes Ford scrappage.
It might still be cold and dark outside, but at least a new phone can brighten things up. You can get an epic iPhone 8 with a 12-megapixel camera at an epic price. At Tesco Mobile, you can get the iPhone 8 for only $19.99 a month. That's a saving of £90. So go in store or search Tesco Mobile. Tesco Mobile. Every little helps.
Ends 23rd of February, saving £2.50 per month over 36 months. Was £22.49. 36-month credit and rolling monthly usage agreements required. Subject to status phase. Policy applies. See tescomobile.com/terms.
Good morning, this is your Southern service to London Victoria. Join in our onboard quiz. Here's our next clue. What sea sounds like a handheld party food but keeps you dry and protected from the rain? Not canapes, canopies.
At Southern Railway, we're investing over £7 million into making improvements for you, like canopies, cycle parking and new platform lighting across more of our stations. Find out more and book your tickets at southernrailway.com. Southern Railway, we're with you.
This is not a commercial. This is a reminder. With TuneIn Premium, you could be listening to more music commercial-free. Get over 45 commercial-free music stations. Visit tunein.com/premium to upgrade.
When you're not listening to your team, take it to the end zone, the rim, or the net. Keep up with the biggest moments in sports by following TuneIn on social media.
Block, Cook into the end zone for the touchdown.
From reminders of the live top games to tips of the best sports stations and podcasts.
Welcome to Undisputed. We are live from Los Angeles. I'm Jenny Taft here with Skip
Follow
Bayless.
at TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn. The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
To have a Marxist or a socialist, leading what was once a great party. So, look, I think it would be easier in terms of the general election, but I don't think it would be good for the country.
Greg, give us a perspective. You have a particular perspective because you're based in London. You're in Washington today, but you're based in London. You represent a lot of companies doing business around the world, often with potential U.S. involvement. How do businessmen overseas, American business, perceive the Trump administration versus, for example, Joe Biden or a Bernie Sanders or a Mike Bloomberg, for that matter?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'll answer the question, first with the president and then with the Democratic candidates. I mean, the business people around the world actually like this president. They like what he's done. They wish their own governments would take a page out of the U.S. playbook and reduce regulations, reduce taxation. Let the economy, let the private sector work. It's better for growth. It's better for wages. They get that. And so there's a really good perspective, especially in the countries that have suffered under some sort of socialist model, or especially in Eastern Europe, where those countries suffered for, under the Soviet Union, under communism for 75 years. Those people understand it, and they don't want any part of this socialist model that's being promoted both in the UK by Mr. Corbyn and in the U.S. by Bernie Sanders. So as far as the Democrats, look, I don't think anybody really takes Bernie Sanders seriously in Europe. Sometimes I think they should, because the fact that he's getting such a high percentage of the young vote should be worrisome to all of us. But I think they would respect Mr. Bloomberg much more because he's a successful business person. I just don't think that's going to sell well in today's Democratic Party, where success and capitalism is kind of viewed, or looked down upon by many on the party's far progressive left flank. I don't think that's going to work in the primaries, but I think in the general election it might have some appeal to some moderate Republicans.
So let's ask somebody who's worked for the Democratic Party here in the United States, Basil. What about Greg's point here? Is there a room? Tom Steyer says you got to take the president on the economy. Is there room for someone in the Democratic Party to take the president on, given the strength of this economy?
I think there is, but it's a very nuanced argument. It's not necessarily an argument that says that the economy isn't doing well, because I also think if you accept the argument, you're also accepting the president's premise that he made it better. So there has to be a bit of a wedge, and that wedge could be affordability, it could be economic security. If you see companies freezing or canceling pensions, or the fact that the minimum wage isn't going up in every state, for example, there is some real concern from if you're older, if you're younger, about whether or not you can actually afford to live where you are.
But that wedge that you described actually pushes you a little bit in the Jeremy Corbyn direction, doesn't it?
I don't listen. It's a tricky argument. There's no question about it. And I think if you're going to Greg's point earlier, if you look at where the enthusiasm and the movement is around the party, it's around those issues, and it's around a Sanders, it's around a Warren, and that's why Joe Biden is having this really difficult time trying to argue for a real center lane. So the question is if a Mike Bloomberg starts to do very well going forward, particularly as we get to April in New York and some of these other states that are going to be voting, our voters going to say, look, what we really want is someone that understands how to go after this president and how to keep us going in the same direction without some of the challenges that this particular president provides. And that's kind of what the Bloomberg argument is.
Greg, does the president have a challenge potentially on his platter today that he didn't have a month or two ago, and that is the aftermath of this coronavirus? Because that seems to be a bit of a wild card right now in the economy globally and potentially over the United States as well. Will the president be tested in how he can manage that if, in fact, there is something of a downturn?
Yeah, I mean, so far so good in terms of how the crisis has been managed, by the United States, by this government. But I think that there's some things you just can't control. And if there's a slowdown in global growth, I mean, you're going to see it obviously in the cruise business. You're going to see it. You've already seen it in airlines. You're going to take a big hit. So, look, I think we're all worried about what this can do to global growth and the effect that it'll have on the U.S. economy. He's just going to have to try to be articulate in explaining that, that his policies have worked. And I think he's done a good job of messaging there that his policies have worked, especially for lower income quartile that's, whose wages are up significantly more than high income earners. So wage growth is really important. I think that's what he's got to highlight because we have to expect there'll be some GDP slowdown from the coronavirus.
Okay, thanks very much to our political panel. Basil Smokler here with me in New York and Greg Swenson joining us from Washington. Breaking news now, Macy's long-term credit rating has been cut to junk by S&P. It now has a BB+ rating. The struggling department store chain has more than $4 billion in bonds and loans outstanding, according to data compiled by Bloomberg. This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and on radio.
Message and data rates may apply. T&C and privacy terms can be found at babbel.com/terms. Please don't text and drive.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then try Babbel for free by texting EXPLORE to 64,000. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just text EXPLORE to 64,000 and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or text EXPLORE to 64,000 and try it for free. Text EXPLORE to 64,000.
Hi, I'm your host, Smokey Cole Bear. Filling in for Smokey, because after 75 years of...
Only you can prevent wildfires.
Turns out there's much more to say. Nearly 90% of wildfires are caused by us humans being careless, dumping our used barbecue coals willy-nilly. Guess the song was wrong. We did start the fire. That's why I respect Mother Nature and her trees, whether coniferous or new car scented. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
A pack needs someone to follow.
It's got to be important for somebody to have a breakout moment.
Don't look now, but they're behind you.
Imports declined 2.8%.
Bloomberg Daybreak.
Sources tell us that agreement is expected to include commitments on U.S. intellectual property.
With Karen Moscow and Nathan Hager.
Could we see that play into the results and the forward guidance?
Weekday mornings at 5 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and Radio. I'm David Weston. HSBC shook up the banking world with its announcement today that it would be laying off 35,000 employees over the next 3 years, look to save $4.5 billion in costs and take a $7.3 billion charge. The HSBC CFO, Ewan Swenson, talked earlier with Bloomberg Television.
We are shrinking in areas where we think that we have clear underperformance and a lack of long-term sustainable competitive advantage. Equally, in today's plan, what you see is significant investment in those parts of the business where we do think we have competitive advantage and we can grow. So I think we're absolutely doing both of those things.
Yeah, it definitely was an interesting comment from one of the shareholders and sort of laid the options for HSBC, Ewan, as fairly binary. What you're saying is that you're kind of balancing those two sides of the coin. Are you happy that you're getting the balance right from those two binary options?
We think this is the right thing for the bank to do, the right plan for now. We are looking to invest $100 billion of risk-weighted assets, around $14 to $15 billion of capital in the next 3 years in parts of the business that are performing well, particularly Asia. So we do think this is the right balance. It's coupled with a very substantive cost reduction program, coupled with organizational simplification to allow us to speed up the pace of execution. We think it's a great plan.
You just pick up on the risk-weighted assets. I could say to you probably you're at that moment of leaning into not bad asset price markets and a hunger for yield. The risk-weighted assets you're going to sell, just a little bit more complexion on them before we go.
Yeah, well, unsurprisingly, it's in parts of the business, the markets business in global banking and markets. I think we are intending to exit a lot of domestically focused customers in Europe and the US on the global banking side. And we're also going to exit international customers that are not producing acceptable returns today. So I think we're going to be quite surgical and ruthless in terms of targeting those parts of the business where we're not generating acceptable returns. We're going to take those risk-weighted assets and reinvest them in parts of the business where we can see much better returns.
That was HSBC CFO Ewan Stevenson. We're speaking to Bloomberg's Daybreak Europe earlier today. It's time now for the stock of the hour. ConAgra Brands is the worst performer in the S&P 500. The stock is dropping nearly 8% and on pace for its worst day since June after cutting its sales and earnings forecasts. Kayla Lentz is here with more, and this one apparently is not coronavirus, at least not yet.
It is not yet, but they are still taking down expectations ahead of their earnings next month. Essentially, they're saying organic sales for the full fiscal year are going to be flat to up 0.5%. They previously saw that growth as high as 1.5%. And on earnings, what was the high end of their forecast of $2.07, or excuse me, the low end is now the high end. The company is placing blame for this on weakness in the third quarter. They say they were prepared for tougher comps year on year, but they just weren't expecting this level of category weakness. They say it really started in food service, in restaurants. They say restaurant traffic in the holiday quarter was a lot lower than last year, and that's a segment that made up about 10% of its business, so that area of weakness. And they said that bled through to retail in January as well. And that point is interesting to me because ConAgra's top customer is Walmart. It makes up about 25% of its sales, and we know that Walmart was also out with disappointing fourth quarter
So you've got retail, you've got restaurants. Does it tell us something about the consumer?
It may tell us something about the consumer in the sense that Walmart is the only one that has warned on this holiday quarter. Target did the same thing, and on ConAgra, the fact that restaurant traffic was lower may tell us a little bit about discretionary spending. That said, it may tell us more about how retailers are competing with Amazon and how ConAgra is competing with changing consumer taste than it does about the health of the consumer.
Yeah, not a good deal for ConAgra. Okay, thanks so much to Kayla Lentz for that report. Now we have breaking news, another one. Renault's long-term credit rating has been cut to junk by Moody's. The French automaker was downgraded to Ba1 rating. The outlook remains stable. The company has more than 26 billion euros in public bonds and loans outstanding. This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and on radio.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. U.S. stocks are falling after Apple said it will miss its sales target for the quarter due to the fallout from the coronavirus epidemic. The Dow is down 245 points, S&P dropping 20, the Nasdaq losing 43. In deals, two big money managers are joining forces. Franklin Resources made an offer for asset manager Legg Mason. The deal will create an investing giant with more than $1 trillion in assets under management. The Boy Scouts of America is filing for bankruptcy. The group is making the move after decades of sexual abuse claims. Settlements have strained the Boy Scouts' finances. And the world's richest person has decided that fighting climate change will be his philanthropic focus. Amazon founder Jeff Bezos is vowing to spend $10 billion, giving it away in grants to scientists and others through his Bezos Earth Fund. Donna Wilson, Bloomberg Radio.
Hey, y'all, Jeff Foxworthy here. Now, if you've ever found yourself repeating the same thing
over and over for 75 years, you might be Smokey Bear.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
That's why I'm filling in for Smokey to switch things up, because there's a lot more to say. And I should know because my grandfather was a firefighter. And one of the things he taught me is that the people that love the outdoors the most are often the ones accidentally starting wildfires, which means always BYOB. No, bring your own bucket to the campfire. And be extra careful with things like burning yard trimmings. Don't just walk away, or chances are you might be starting a wildfire. So for the love of the outdoors, go to SmokeyBear.com to learn more about wildfire prevention. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
Melissa from Michigan. I work an extra part-time job serving lunch at my child's school, but I still can't afford to put food on our table.
Daniel from California. Choosing whether to pay the rent or pay to fix the car to get to work doesn't leave us with much at all. Now we can't even pay for meals.
Hunger is a story we can end. End it at feedingamerica.org. Brought to you by Feeding America and the Ad Council.
Have you ever thought, I wish I had that information sooner?
What does this tell us about the state of deal making?
Let's fix that.
One unprofitable company plus another doesn't make a profitable company.
Carol Mazur.
Talk to us about real-world applications.
Jason Kelly.
Remind us what the potential is for everyday folk.
Bloomberg Business Week.
Vice President of Exploratory Science is one of the cooler titles.
Weekday afternoons at 2 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg Business Week, now live on YouTube.
From New York, this is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and Radio. I'm David Weston. For Bloomberg First Word News, we go now to Mark Crumpton.
David, the Department of Homeland Security is waiving 10 federal contracting laws to speed construction of a wall at the U.S.-Mexico border. They include requirements for having open competition and justifying selections. The move is expected to spark criticism that the Trump administration is overstepping its authority, but similar legal challenges in the past have failed. The United Nations says government forces must allow humanitarian aid into conflict areas in northwest Syria. Speaking in Geneva today, the UN human rights chief added it was, quote, cruel beyond belief that civilians are living under plastic sheeting in freezing conditions while getting bombed. The comments come a day after Syria pledged to press ahead with a military campaign that has displaced hundreds of thousands of people. In Afghanistan, election officials say President Ashraf Ghani has a second term. The Election Commission says Ghani got just over 50% of the vote. His challenger, Abdullah Abdullah, received 39%. The election took place in September. Results were repeatedly delayed amid accusations of misconduct and technical problems with counting ballots. President Trump has pardoned Edward DeBartolo Jr., the former San Francisco 49ers owner, convicted in a gambling fraud scandal in 1998. DeBartolo pleaded guilty to failing to report a felony when he paid $400,000 to former Louisiana Governor Edwin Edwards in exchange for a riverboat gambling license. He avoided prison, was fined $1 million, and was suspended for a year by the National Football League. But the incident effectively ended his NFL career. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in over 120 countries. I'm Mark Crumpton. This is Bloomberg. David?
Thanks very much, Mark. Apple shook markets with its announcement. They would miss revenue targets because of the coronavirus and effects on its supply chain. And there's good reason to believe Apple may not be the last company with those sorts of problems. Welcome now someone whose practice it is to navigate Western companies through China's legal waters. Dan Harris is a co-founder of Harris Brick and Law Firm and co-author of the celebrated China Law blog. He comes to us today from Seattle over the telephone. So Dan, thanks so much for joining us. First of all, give us a sense of what's going on the ground as far as you know. You represent a lot of companies over there. What is really going on? To what extent is the Chinese economy, at least in the Hubei province, really frozen?
Well, in that province, it's basically completely frozen. It's outside that province where everything just really depends.
So do you have a sense overall of China's economy? There have been various estimates coming out of banks and others about the extent to which GDP growth will be reduced. Do you have a sense of how accurate those estimates really are?
I think they're pretty inaccurate. I think it's very difficult to get a handle on what's going on in China with respect to the impact of the coronavirus. We're basically telling our clients who are asking, when will we get our products? Our answer is, you will get them when you get them. It's impossible, even factory by factory, to predict what's going to happen. Because even if a factory opens up, that doesn't mean that they'll have the people they need to fix their equipment. It doesn't mean they'll be able to get the product to the port. It doesn't mean they'll be able to get the product to leave the port.
Dan, do you have a sense of whether the regime, the government, President Xi on down, really knows what's going on, or it's just moving too fast for it to keep up?
That's a great question. I think it generally knows what's going on. I don't think it's revealing to the world what's going on.
Which is to say, you think it's worse than what we're hearing?
I think it's way worse. And one of the reasons I say that is based on what I am hearing from friends in China, in various different cities, and even people who read our blog, who write us. And they are basically saying, people, and these are in cities like Shanghai and Beijing, people are not going out. I have a friend